Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1456 of the War News stream. And I think we are approaching 0 hour as of this weekend. We'll have to see, though. But right now, we're seeing that Israel's ordered wartime status for imminent U.S. strikes on Iran coming very soon. Also, we're hearing that Russia is preparing a massive military mobilization, perhaps one of the largest ones of the war. And also, Iran missile launches are imminent in 24 hours, possibly into the Strait of Hormuz. And we have a lot of news tonight, and it's good to see you all once again.
And, of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as we have been able to hear significant developments from the Middle East, the Eastern Mediterranean, Eastern Europe, East Asia, the eastern part of the Atlantic, and also the eastern seaboard of the United States of America. Generally everywhere that's east. We have been able to hear significant developments within the Middle East in particular, as the Islamic Republic of Iran does appear to be within the very last moments of the time that will begin, or we will generally call here in the future, the pre-war period. It does appear that the United States of America has been conducting what can only be described as record airlifts into the region today, as dozens of aircraft have been flying in and out of the region over the past 24 hours. Quite truly the largest number that we had ever seen so far. We've also been able to hear that the Israelis have now put themselves on wartime alert and are currently conducting wartime preparations, as Israeli officials and the Israeli government do believe that military actions and strikes by the United States of America against the Islamic Republic of Iran are heavily expected to be occurring within this weekend, or possibly within the next weekends to follow. Still, the state of Israel is wanting to make sure that they are prepared by every measure possible to be able to respond to any incoming Iranian fire after the United States conducts their first strikes. We've seen that at the same time, significant explosions have rocked most major cities within the Islamic Republic of Iran today, including Tehran, Shiraz, and other cities throughout the region. It seems as though a large amount of these attacks and explosions are largely based from operatives on the ground, as it appears that an unconfirmed bunker within the area of the Paran region of southwestern Tehran exploded and caught on fire today, largely burning from the inside out, with the fires so hot and so heavy inside the bunkers that it appears that the smoke was billowing out of the air ventilation shafts around the area of the bunker that was generally unknown by the public up until now. Rebels and protests are still ongoing inside of Iran and are also growing in ferocity and strength. We have been able to see that some of the rebels have actually set some government offices, including a besiege office within the city of Sabzavar, on fire today, while others are continuing to show massive showings of force around the area of Isfahan, and particularly the town of Najafabad. It seems as though the Iranian government, although trying to put extensive pressure and once again conducting crimes against humanity to try and put down these protests and uprisings, are seeing that this is not really producing any positive results at the moment, and these protests are beginning to grow. The Russian Federation's naval forces, and I mean one corvette, has arrived today in Bandar Abbas, which was much smaller than the expected flotilla that we thought was going to arrive to join into the Iranian war games that are currently being conducted inside of the Strait of Hormuz. It appears that the Stochny, which is the name of the little boat that the Russians sent, is going to be the only vessel that is involved in the Iranian war games on the part of the Russian Federation. The Iranians have also announced a NOTAM over the large majority of their central and western airspace, as they will be preparing to launch anti-ship missiles through that corridor within the next 24 hours and will be attempting to strike targets somewhere within the Gulf of Oman. Interestingly enough, the trajectory of these missiles, while flying through the eastern part of Iran, are generally going to be heading out into the Gulf of Oman, generally, in large part, towards where the USS Abraham Lincoln is, at least in cardinal direction, further on down inside of the Arabian Sea. We've also been able to hear that the United States Air Forces have been conducting record flights over the course of the day, of course, as usual, really over the past 24 hours, and we can see more conga lines of aircraft flying in and out of the region, C-17s flying out to pick up more equipment, and KC-135s and KC-46 aerial tankers flying in, possibly even with combat aircraft in tow, once again into the Middle East. The USS Gerald R. Ford is currently transiting the Strait of Gibraltar at this very moment, and is expected to arrive in theater probably by the time right before this weekend, probably around Thursday or Friday. We've also been able to see that outside of all of the developments within the Middle East, the North Koreans have now unveiled a brand new transporter-rector launcher for one of their ICBMs. Additionally, the U.S. is still conducting further air flights out of the United States in the prior 24 hours that we will be covering. Inside of Europe, the situation in the Russian Federation is getting even worse, as another large oil company has declared bankruptcy today, with the Russian central banks starting the liquidation process effective immediately. The Russian's economy does appear to be largely at this point defunct and down the drain, and is only hanging on by mere threads, which the Ukrainians are trying to sever as quickly as they can. Heavy drone attacks have been conducted across the entirety of Western Russia, with another drone attack once again hitting Utka, which is one of the longest range targets that we've seen hit so far by Ukrainian long-range drones, and it has now been hit a second time. Oil depots are on fire inside of the Pskov area, along with Smolensk. The power plant in Belgrade has been hit for about the 9,000th time, and we've also seen that within Cheboksary there is another major factory that has been hit. There are also rumors and word going around in the street, currently, apparently from some sort of a rumor from the inner Russian circles of the Kremlin, that the reason why WhatsApp and Telegram were actually banned recently was so that way Putin could get ready to prepare for the announcement of a complete mobilization of the Russian Federation's industries and economy and the citizenry, so that way they can try and get the final push and momentum that they need to be able to try and get the upper hand on the Ukrainians permanently throughout the duration of the conflict. The Ukrainians, on the other hand, have actually retaken about 200 square kilometers of ground inside of Ukraine from the Russians due to this major failing of banning Telegram and WhatsApp, and are currently still inflicting significant casualties on the Russian Federation armed forces, and are also holding them at bay wherever else they may be. Of course, the summary for the news today is an incredibly large one, and as usual, folks, in these troubling weeks that we have right now, news is massive, and we will be making sure to get into every single piece of the news, starting with our largest stories first, and then working our way on down into the smaller stories throughout the night. With that in mind,
I'll tell you what, we've been waiting a long time for this, by the way. It really feels, and we're not going to make a prediction, by the way, because it's simply futile to do that, because we could end up being wrong, and it's nearly impossible to predict when exactly the U.S. is going to strike Iran, but it feels like I'm getting a feeling in the gut that something might happen maybe this weekend, but we can't take that to the bank, though, because we've said that before, and it turns out that it wasn't going to happen, but it feels like something might be different. I think it's these massive deployments we keep seeing over and over and over. It just feels like it's right around the corner, but we'll have to see.
You know, something does feel different. I can't really tell what it is, folks. The fact that it's snowing out here in Salt Lake for one of the first times that we've ever been out here, or maybe it's feeling different because Kamini has something inside of his diaper right now due to the fear that he feels of what's about to happen this weekend, or possibly within the next few weekends. But nevertheless, we will be making sure to get into all of that major news starting right now. And moving us on into the Middle East, we have been able to hear of further significant developments that are ongoing at this moment within the region and do appear to once again be showing that war is highly likely to happen incredibly soon within the region. I do want to say that we generally would like to say that it would be this weekend, but once again, U.S. planning is fairly lackadaisical or kind of inaccurate in terms of what the predicted timetable would actually be and how it turns out. So we generally don't want to give a perfect statement like that and then work off of that because it most likely might end up becoming incorrect. However, we can tell y'all that right now, just to show y'all the current air picture inside of the region, that there is a humongous, and I mean literally a humongous conga line of 5 C-17 Globemasters that did land inside the Middle East earlier today, unloaded their cargoes, and they're currently flying back into EUCOM's area of responsibility to then land most likely at a German or a British air base, and then fly back to the United States of America to go and pick up even more equipment and possibly bring it back into the region. Or this might be the last time that we see one of these airlifts being conducted, one of the few that will remain. We also are seeing right now that there is an entire flight of KC-46 Pegasus Stratotankers that are currently flying into the United Kingdom right now, while there is also another WC-135R Constant Phoenix, which appears to have just taken off, or is about to take off at Mindenhall in the United Kingdom, or Mildenhall, correction. We also see a C-5 Galaxy currently flying into the United Kingdom or Germany, taking out of Dover, Delaware just a little while ago. And we can also see what appears to be some other military aircraft, which are currently conducting the transit over the Atlantic right now, but are not American. Meanwhile, in the New England area, there is another flight of 3, and that's a count of 3 C-17 Globemasters, which currently are once again flying back across the Atlantic with more equipment to drop off in the Middle East. And that's also not to add on to the fact that there is a U.S. MQ-4 Triton that did take off today somewhere within the UAE, conducted some orbits within the Persian Gulf, and is now flown all the way out to the Eastern Mediterranean. Right now, just as we're live on air, there are still humongous airlifts and air activity being seen by the U.S. Air Force, which is still showing us that at the moment, preparations are going on at a fever pitch. The Israelis seem to be picking onto this quite well, and we did get to hear that apparently they're stating that 0 hour may just be days away, and the Israeli officials are currently now conducting wartime preparations and putting the nation on wartime alert as a result of these major deployments and developments that we're currently seeing in the area. To give you all a little bit of an idea as to how large the forcing is within the area in CENTCOM right now, around 33% of the deployable portion of the United States Navy, that means one in every 3 warships that we have operational on the entirety of the face of the globe, are currently within CENTCOM's area of responsibility or soon to come under CENTCOM's area of command. We also understand that a significant portion of the United States Air Force and its combat air wings is also forward deployed into CENTCOM's area of responsibility directly, with a large amount of supporting aircraft also based out of EUCOM's area of responsibility as well. Just going off of the portion of the naval ships that are present, we don't really get that sort of a portion or number out of the Air Force quite openly, but we would also assume that around a quarter of the entire combat air wing of the United States Air Force is highly likely within the area of the CENTCOM area of responsibility at this moment right now, meaning that the force grouping that we're seeing in that region right now is one of the largest that we've ever seen, to be entirely frank with y'all, ever since the beginning of the Operation Desert Storm in 1991 as a part of the Gulf War. It's highly likely that this sort of a grouping hasn't been seen since then, and another time that may have had a similar grouping, but probably would have been smaller, would have been the invasion of Iraq in 2003 and the invasion of Afghanistan in 2001. These groupings are absolutely massive, and it does appear that the Israelis are already preparing themselves for what is to come. We do know that the Iranian threats that are standing at the moment against the United States generally also include Israel as well, in that if the United States conducts any strikes against the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Iranians are going to conduct missile and drone attacks against U.S. bases throughout the entirety of the region, and they are also going to attempt to conduct simultaneously overwhelming drone and missile attacks against Israeli airspace to attempt to try and destroy military facilities and critical infrastructure of the state of Israel. This seems to be something that the Israelis are fairly concerned about, and while they are pushing heavily for the beginning of a conflict with Iran, it also appears that they understand that their air defense situation might be fairly strenuous. The 12-day war did show that while their missile-based interceptors are fairly world-class technologically, they just do not have enough interceptors and also a replenishment capability to be able to keep all of those missile interceptors operational at a 24/7 constant basis. For that reason, even with coalition air defense support, a decent amount of missiles from the Islamic Republic of Iran were able to make it through Israeli air defense perimeters and hit targets inside of Israel, including Tel Aviv, Beersheba, and also the port at Haifa, among many other targets, including the Nevatim air base and others that were also hit during that time. It seems as though right now, while the Israelis are once again knowing that that will be the reality of the situation, they also seem to be heavily supportive of a war against Iran, as the Islamic Republic of Iran is largely not only a significant and critical threat to the state of Israel, but it's also a national security threat and issue for the United States of America to be able to see continuing to exist within the region. And this has led a lot of people to wonder, considering that the U.S. is still conducting major airlifts into the region, and also, I wanted to give you all a little bit of a better idea of what it really looked like earlier in the day. Let me show you all this. This is what the U.S. air flights in the Middle East looked like earlier today, as far as aircraft just going to the Middle East.
I tell you, man. Also, by the way, Flight Radar 24 actually went down today. Nobody's really sure why it went down. Immediately, people got suspicious, including me. I was like, wait a minute. We just heard those comments about the Twitter randos from the U.S. Air Force. So are they messing with it or something? But apparently, I think what might have happened, and I can't confirm this, but I think so many people were trying to monitor aircraft that it might have caused an issue, perhaps. Not totally sure, but it was crazy. It crashed earlier, and then when it came back on, it was like literally military flights absolutely flooding Europe, flooding the Middle East. It was insane. I took a screenshot of it and put it on our Twitter page. It was wild how many flights were in the sky just of the U.S. Air Force, just today alone.
Now, let me see if I can get you all that picture here really quickly, because I think it was further on up on our Twitter. I didn't repost it because we had so many of these clips already. I was like, I don't want to repost something that's redundant, but these were these were all of the flights by the U.S. and other countries that were in Europe today.
Yeah, that's insane. Like, I mean, just look at Saudi Arabia. I mean, Saudi Arabia's airspace is literally full of mainly U.S. Air Force flights. Also, I think some Italian Air Force flights as well. And I think maybe some UK flights were in there too. It's a lot. Like, I mean, there's still like a massive airlift going on even today.
And it is absolutely tremendous, at least in scale and size, what's going on right now. And we also have been able to see that because of all of this, and also due to the fact that the Iranians completely spat in the face of U.S. negotiating teams again in Geneva, Switzerland, the Israelis seem to be in the likely option right now, or at least in their minds, that the U.S. is going to bomb Iran incredibly soon. And once again, incredibly soon could be any period of time. And I don't mean any period of time as in like 3 years from now. I mean any time in between this weekend and 3 weekends or 4 weekends from now. That is probably what the Israelis and us here on the channel are both considering to be incredibly soon as far as military activities and operations. And this has led a lot of people to wonder, what are the Israelis actually thinking about this? And what are y'all thinking about it as well? Do y'all think that military operations against Iran are just days away? Do y'all think that it's weeks away? Do y'all think that you're not really sure? What are people thinking about it, Matthew? And what are you thinking about it as well?
Okay, so right now, the Israeli military assessments are indicating that U.S. strikes on Iran are likely just days away, most likely going to take place by Sunday, which is, I believe, February the 22nd. And do you agree with that assessment? 68% said yes, it will happen in mere days, while 12% said no, the U.S. will hesitate and they'll probably delay the strikes even further. And 11% said no, the U.S. hasn't fully deployed yet, and they're really not ready for strikes. And I hate to speak in definite statements because we don't want to make definite statements about this because we simply cannot predict when these strikes are going to take place. It's simply futile to do that because the current U.S. foreign policy is very off the cuff. It's very impromptu, and there could be a last-minute decision change. But my assessment is I believe the U.S. has already given the final order to carry out attacks on Iran. The only issue right now is timing and making sure that it lines up to be logistically appropriate and also, I guess you could say strategic as well to strike Iran. It's basically the timing is the issue because they would not deploy this many military equipment to the region unless they were certain they were going to attack. What we're seeing right now is literally the deployments you would do if you were going to conduct a prolonged war against Iran. And I suspect we're going to see very similar to the 2003 shock and awe strategy that we saw with Iraq. We're likely going to see something very similar, if not stronger than that, on Iran in possibly the next few days, and maybe beyond that as well. So I'm with the 68%. I am with the Israelis. I think it'll happen in mere days. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that I think it's going to be happening incredibly soon, possibly within the next few days, probably within the next weekend or the one after that. It seems as though military, at least supply and logistics operations are increasing in speed and also the frequency in which flights are being conducted. And that would give us an idea that there is definitely some sort of a rush at this moment to try and get everything ready for some sort of a set time frame to where this military operation is supposed to begin, which we would assume would be this weekend. Because if they're rushing this weekday, today, what in the world would they be rushing to achieve? And that would highly likely be some sort of strikes beginning on the weekend. So that's what I'm thinking at the moment. And also on top of that, the Gerald R. Ford has pretty much conducted what I would describe as a breakneck transit across the Atlantic, going about as fast as it physically could to be able to reach the Strait of Gibraltar today, and will soon be reaching some area in the Eastern Mediterranean, at least at a minimum to provide air defense. It'll be definitely within range to be able to do that, or it will be within range to also conduct combat air activities against Iran from its western borders. Either way, it's fairly clear at the moment that they are getting ready for some sort of a major operation to commence here soon, and it's either going to be this weekend or it's going to be the weekend after that, in my opinion. And once again, folks, take that with a grain of salt, because that would be the most logical sort of analysis, is that as soon as we get forces in place, we strike, because that gives the enemy the least amount of time to understand our force disposition and what we might be able to do with what we have available. But generally, that is not the way the U.S. administration is currently operated, at least at this moment, in terms of military activities. We usually see that forces could be sitting in position for weeks or months even before any sort of a military action is taken against a country, i.e. Venezuela. However,
yeah. Also, speaking of Venezuela, if you go back and examine that situation, because you remember with Venezuela, we were waiting around for ages. Like we were running streams just like we are now about Iran, saying, "Oh, it's coming soon, it's coming soon," and we did that for a pretty long period of time because we were expecting the strikes to happen a lot sooner than they actually did. And it turns out that the U.S. actually hesitated for actually several months. But after the fact, though, in hindsight, we did learn that apparently the U.S. had already given the order months prior that they were going to extract Maduro from Venezuela, and it was simply a matter of timing. They were actually planning on doing it several weeks before they actually pulled it off, but because of weather issues and logistical issues, they had to postpone it. So I think it's the same situation with Iran. I believe the order's already been given, and that's why we're seeing these massive deployments. It's just that this administration, instead of waiting until it's actually time to strike Iran, they go ahead and start basically saying it before they're actually ready for it. So that's what makes it seem like we're waiting a long time, but in reality, it's basically status quo. He's just going about it a different way.
yeah, I would have to say that that probably is the case. I also got to add in, by the way, from the Israeli home front perspective, that Israeli media did say today that the Israelis are pushing for a maximalist approach and are currently targeting regime change, as well as Iran's nuclear and missile program ceasing completely in terms of development and operation, and that they're preparing for a war within days. And that's according to 2 Israeli officials who spoke to Israeli media today. I do want to make it a little bit clear, however, that while we do believe that some sort of a military action against Iran is probably going to be happening quite soon just due to the force deployments, the Israeli media is not really a place that anyone should be looking for a source on when this is going to begin, because the Israelis have been saying for a solid month now in their media that the strikes are going to happen within days. They've literally been saying that basically since mid-January, about a month ago, and they've been saying that endlessly since then. We haven't been saying that endlessly since the middle of January. We've actually been saying for a long time that the U.S. definitely isn't ready for strikes, but now with the amount of forces that we have currently present within the area, there really isn't a doubt. We are definitely ready for strikes right now, and the Gerald R. Ford will most likely be adding some icing onto the cake in terms of strike and defensive capabilities here in the near future. I've also been able to see today that the Gerald R. Ford is nearby to the Strait of Gibraltar and is currently transiting the Strait of Gibraltar from what we would know right now. This is a U.S. government vessel, which is a bit of an understatement for it to be the most advanced supercarrier currently on the planet, but it is currently transiting the Strait of Gibraltar, and it is going to be making its way into the region as quickly as possible. I wish I could show it to y'all here on this marine tracker system, but sadly it's actually turned its transponder system off, so we actually do not know where it is at the moment inside the Mediterranean. It has definitely passed through the Strait of Gibraltar at this point, and it is now going to be making its way on into the eastern Mediterranean at all available speed. That also is adding on to the fact that strikes are going to be highly likely, because the Gerald R. Ford has basically broken ankles to be able to get across the Atlantic this quickly. It had to make a 3,400-mile voyage in about 5 days or so at this point from my last count, because I actually believe that, actually, here we go, right over here, this was on Saturday, that we were stating that the Gerald R. Ford is leaving. It's now Wednesday, which is only about 4 or 5 days later, and the Gerald R. Ford made it all the way from the Caribbean, where we were able to confirm it was still there, because we were able to see that the aircraft, the E-2s that are a part of the Gerald R. Ford, had to fly out of Puerto Rico and back to the Gerald R. Ford to hop on board and ride across the Atlantic with it. That happened Saturday, and we now see that the Gerald R. Ford support aircraft are now flying around near to the Strait of Gibraltar, meaning that that aircraft carrier made it all the way across the Atlantic in about roughly 4.5 to 5 days, which is an unbelievable speed. They were traveling about 700 miles per day to be able to make it to the Strait of Gibraltar at this point, which is a pretty high speed. That's near to the maximum speed that the aircraft carrier can allow by design, and that also means that once it makes it through the Strait of Gibraltar, it is probably going to be proceeding at breakneck speed through the Mediterranean and on towards the area of the Eastern Mediterranean to join CENTCOM's area of responsibility, which will be happening here probably within the next few days. I would assume that it might arrive within the Eastern Mediterranean if it's continuing at the same speed sometime around Thursday or Friday, I'd assume, because it is traveling rapidly. Also, really quickly,
Man, I bet the U.S. Air Force would love to be able to turn off the transponder like the Navy can do. Like the Navy can just flip their transponder off and they can just keep going, because of the speed of the vessels, they don't have to really worry about collisions, or at least, I don't think they have to worry about collisions, but we have seen a couple happen in the last month or so. But they can just flip the thing off. They can go right into the war zone area and be completely fine turning off the transponder, but they can't do that with the airplanes. Like that's something that they can absolutely cannot do. So when it comes to the Navy, like OPSEC's not too bad. Like when it comes to that situation.
Yeah, I would have to agree. It's definitely not bad at all. We also have been able to see, folks, that there are more F-15s that appear to be en route to the Middle East. We actually got to see this picture today somewhere within Europe, showing a KC-135 carrying on along with it what appears to be F-15Es, I would assume. They might not be. I have to also hedge that. It might not be F-15Es. It might be F-15Cs, because we may be bringing in some air superiority versions of the F-15, but I'm also kind of doubting that a little bit, considering that we're probably looking for multi-role strike capabilities. This may be another squadron or another wing of F-15Es that are currently flying into CENTCOM's area of responsibility. But moving on out of that little picture that does confirm that there are aircraft in tow with the tankers, we have also been able to see, getting us on closer and into the area of the Middle East, that one country that is not in the Middle East is trying to make its stand for the Islamic Republic of Iran. A country that is one that we have talked about a whole lot. One that is truly something to be feared, something to be reckoned with, something that when we talk about money, it can crash like no other. And before we get on into the huge development of who that is and what they're doing right now in the Middle East, I do want to ask you all a question about the major U.S. Air Forces that we're seeing being deployed in the area, and the idea that some people have been putting around that the U.S. is about to conduct what it was called back in 2003. Well, let's see. What did the Bloods call it back in the day? Oh, yeah, the shock and the awe sort of a strategy against the Iranians. And a lot of people are wondering, is the U.S. going to conduct that little bit of a move on the Iranians, and would it work? And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so in case you're unfamiliar with what this is, back in 2003, when the U.S. Entered the Iraq War, they did a strategy what's known as shock and awe. Basically, it's going into a situation where you're about to go to war, it's bringing in overwhelming firepower and absolutely blitzing the hell out of the enemy in the hopes that they'll surrender very quickly and that'll avoid a prolonged war. That is the idea behind shock and awe, and it was used in 2003 in Iraq, like I mentioned, but unfortunately, it did not work the way they expected. We ended up in a 9-year-long war inside of Iraq, and that did not work the way they had hoped. So will it work this time? Because apparently, from what we're hearing from analysts, and also we've been assessing this ourselves, the U.S. is highly likely to use a very similar strategy inside of Iran in the opening days of a war. So do you think it'll work? 57% said yes, it will work this time, while about 16% said it'll fall a little bit short, and 11% said it will fail completely. So this one's a bit tricky because ever since 2003, our technology has gotten a little bit better. We've, of course, got some more advanced aircraft. We got more advanced electronic warfare. We got some new bombs. So with all those tech advancements, is that enough to truly cause shock and awe on Iran? And unfortunately, I don't think it's the case. I think it's going to fall a little bit short. Not because necessarily Iran is well equipped or well armed. They do have a lot of cheap rockets and missiles, but the problem is, though, they have enough to fight back with and generally feel like they still have a chance because it's all about psychology. If they feel like they can still win and they feel like they can still fight, they're going to continue fighting. Shock and awe is trying to basically scare them into submission. I don't think the Iranians are going to be scared into submission that quickly. It'll probably require a week-long, at least, operation to make them actually capitulate. So I don't think it's going to work the way they hope, unfortunately. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that it probably will work pretty well, especially in taking care of Iran's military and air defense capabilities. There really wouldn't be any question. If there was an overwhelming air campaign against those two abilities, it probably would deal a resounding blow to the Iranians' military capabilities and their ability to further defend themselves from future airstrikes that would be conducted on a longer air campaign. I see some people saying that the 2003 shock and awe campaign didn't work, and I find that a little bit odd because if I remember correctly, I think it was within just a few weeks after that shock and campaign that the U.S. had completely occupied the entirety of the nation of Iraq. So as some people may say that it didn't work because the U.S. had to then occupy the country due to our mishandling of the initial occupation period for about the next 8 years after that, but that does not mean that the shock and awe campaign was a failure, because as far as the conventional purposes were concerned, the shock and awe campaign largely completely obliterated or defeated the Iraqi army in 2003 before U.S. forces even rolled in. It also did the same during 1991, which is generally where the term was coined, as the U.S. military and coalition-era operations during the Gulf War in 1991 largely saw that the entirety of the Iraqi army, including their internal logistics, were about completely destroyed before U.S. forces even rolled into the country to attempt to encircle the Iraqi armies that were currently occupying Kuwait. So I would say that, at least based off of the historical precedent, shock and awe air campaigns generally have a great effect, especially against conventional forces, which is generally what our target would be right now. That's not to say that that would definitely work against emboldened people who generally support the Islamic Republic of Iran's government and would conduct terrorist or insurgent operations afterwards. That's an entirely different story, and shock and awe campaigns are not designed to work against those sorts of combatant forces that pop up after the U.S. has been able to conventionally defeat the Islamic Republic of Iran. So I would have to say that it probably will work quite well in destroying Iran's air defense, naval, and also air force and ground force capabilities, basically from a remote standoff location, and then allow for us to start going after the Iranian government after we can see that they are basically defenseless against future U.S. air attacks from that point on. So I generally would say that it's definitely going to work, considering that it has worked in conventional purposes in the past in both instances that we've generally used that sort of an air doctrine.
Yeah, and also, they're going to definitely have to go for the air defense first. Like, that's going to be the first thing that the U.S. forces go for. They have to take that out. And last time, they took it out with not too much difficulty last time. The Israelis were flying their F-35s over Iranian airspace within, I believe it was the first day, like within 24 hours of the 12-day war. They were flying their aircraft all over their airspace. So they didn't have a problem last time. But the issue now is Iran has had a chance to restock their ballistic missiles. So they have a good stock, like from what we can tell. It's not just propaganda. They actually do have a very vast amount of ballistic missiles in their possession. So that is going to be something as well. In addition to air defense, you're going to be able to take out the ballistics pretty quickly to avoid being overwhelmed, because Iran is going to launch them at everybody. That's already been assessed by U.S. forces. Iran will carry through with their threat. They're going to launch them at pretty much every U.S. base in the region. They're going to launch them at Israel. They might even go as far as to launch some at Europe. You never really can tell, because they do have missiles with that range on it. So we'll just have to see. But the U.S. will have to be quick. Like, I'm not really sure if they even have a choice. They'll basically have to go with a shock and awe campaign to be able to have a chance to take out enough air defense to get air superiority very quick.
I also see some people saying something. It's the age-old one. I'll love to see it. It's always a great one to talk about. Iran has real air defenses that are provided to them by Russia and China. So therefore, clearly, the U.S. will not succeed in this military operation against Iran. Oh, come on, folks. If we wanted to have a comedy hour, y'all could go watch some other show, like Rodney Dangerfield or something like that. I mean, suggesting that Russian and Chinese air defense systems are competent by any measure, considering that we saw last year they never even fired off a single shot in the 12-day war, either against U.S. Air Forces that literally flew over Iran and out of Iran, and also the Israeli air forces that flew into Iran and was bombing them nonstop for 12 straight days. The Israelis were dropping JDAMs, 2,000-pound JDAMs on Tehran, literally from right overhead, like it was the Gaza Strip by about day 3 of the conflict. We were literally getting videos of the JDAMs slamming down in the city streets in the middle of Tehran by the 3rd day. Now, if we were to say that the Iranians had proper air defense, but the only reason I would say that they ever had proper air defense is if they had a SAMP-T from the French, or if they had a Patriot or a THAAD from the United States, or any other comparable air defense system from Europe. That is the only moment in time that the Iranians would actually have air defense that is truly threatening to the United States Air Forces. At this moment in time right now, we know that 1, the S-300 and the S-400's radar systems are incredibly crude, not just from the 12-day war last year, but from the endless war going on in Ukraine, where not a damn S-400 has ever done anything good. We've never seen an S-400 or an S-300 actually work in the Ukraine war.
Yeah, and also, by the way, ask Venezuela about that. Like, the whole, I hate using the name discombobulator because it sounds very childish, but that's what the president's calling it. Whatever the secret weapon is that the U.S. has in their possession that can knock out the radar systems on the Russian air defense, which was done in Venezuela, by the way. All those air defense systems were apparently rendered inoperative the moment that the U.S. Special Forces showed up. So I suspect that the U.S. will probably use that same weapon again, whatever the weapon actually is. They'll probably employ that again, which will take care of most of the guided missile systems that Iran uses for air defense. Then they'll simply have to contend with the AA guns that are on the ground. They'll have to go and manually hit each one of those, one after the other. But if they bring the discombobulator back out, we could be looking at some serious damage.
But the truth of it, folks, is that we don't even need to see the U.S. individually target the Gush guns and knock them out. Because here's the great thing about Gush guns. They're operated by just some dudes, and they basically have to do everything. They have to lead the target, they have to first find the target, visually identify the target, identify whether it's enemy or foe, or friend or foe, and then they have to be able to engage it. And to be able to do all those things, they, number one, have to make visual contact with the craft in which they want to fire it at, and secondly, it has to be within range of the guns. The Gush guns have a range, at least vertically, of only about 15,000 feet. Most U.S. air operations, after we're able to gain air superiority, not air supremacy, are generally conducted around 30,000 feet, or 20,000 feet at a minimum, meaning that most aircraft would be well out of range, altitude-wise, of the Gush guns. Secondly, most U.S. weapons are generally standoff capability, meaning that they can be fired from hundreds of miles away, or even at the shortest range, they can be fired from dozens of miles away. If you tried to find an aircraft with the naked eye dozens of miles away, the only way you would even have a chance of slightly seeing one is if it's creating a contrail, and that's assuming that that strike is happening in the middle of broad daylight, which the U.S. doesn't conduct large air operations in broad daylight. We usually prefer conducting nighttime air operations because we generally understand that most countries are not well equipped with night vision or infrared sorts of imaging and targeting systems, also meaning that they really wouldn't see the aircraft at all in that situation. I mean, we could literally go without touching a single one of the Gush guns and just knock out their missile-based air defense systems that have radars, and we would be good to go at that point. We've largely achieved air superiority at that point already, especially considering that the Iranian Air Force took irreparable damage in the 12-day war from Israeli strikes last year, meaning that the Iranian Air Force wouldn't really even pose that much of a threat, at least for right now, due to the strikes it took last year. So our situation, at least in the air defense scenario and also the air offensive scenario, is pretty decent at the moment, and I think it's going to end up pretty good, at least if once the U.S. starts conducting military operations. But this brings us into something else, because we cannot go, folks, without mentioning the real fear factor here. It's not the Iranians, It's a country that's been known for its military prowess for 4 years now. They have shown the world what they are really about. They've shown the world that everything they thought about them was wrong. They weren't some sort of a weak and feeble military that absolutely failed at logistics, communications, and every other important facet that makes a military good. It is a country that truly makes the world tremble. It makes the world get put into fear about how woefully incompetent one can actually be, and then reach even lower than the depths of incompetence that they thought was capable. The Russians have arrived, and they have moored at Bandar Abbas as of today, and it is a humongous letdown, because it's not even a Russian flotilla. It turns out, folks, it is one Russian corvette, the Stochny. It has arrived at Bandar Abbas today, and we were able to get pictures of this. And I'm not going to lie, folks, this is an absolute joke. Before we even show you the video, this is the single Russian corvette that showed up today.
You are expendable, Rambo. You are expendable. I think this is what this boat is expendable. It's kind of crazy. They were making it sound like they were going to bring in like half their naval forces or something to do exercises, but yet they send in this thing. It's like, come on.
This is a corvette, by the way, folks. This thing is basically like an anti-submarine ship that they brought out. It doesn't have any, it basically, well, it does have some VLS cells on board, but they're fairly small. And it really doesn't have any capabilities at all. I mean, that's the crazy thing about it, is that they send one ship, and it almost is the size, we can almost classify this thing as a boat, nearly, with how large it is in naval terms. I mean, this thing is absolutely sad. And also, by the way, it's not the Stochny, which sounded kind of cool. It's actually the goofily named Stoiky. That's the name of this corvette that they brought out. They brought out the Stoiky, which sounds very similar to like the Russian word for squeaky. So the little squeaky is out here in Bandar Abbas right now, and it will be joining the Iranians for some sort of a military exercise. We're assuming that it's probably the following days of Operation Control the Strait.
Oh my God! They brought this abomination out too. This is a joke. What is this? The Super Guppy? What the heck is this?
This is the it's a version of the Kamarov 29. I think it's the naval version of the thing. But it's not good looking. I think I could tell you.
Oh man, they didn't send their best. That's for damn sure.
Also, why does it look like it's rusted over? Like they left it out on the helicopter deck the whole time it was coming over, and it just got rusted over from the days at sea, like getting exposed to salt water.
Yeah, I mean, this is a joke, man. Like, and also, by the way, has the Chinese Navy ever showed up? Like, you know, they said that they were sending some vessels too for naval exercises. Have we seen them there?
They're generally tied up right now with other affairs at the moment. We haven't heard of the arrival of the Chinese.
Oh, harassing the Philippines. I forgot.
Yeah, they're out there beating up some Filipino fishermen with like sticks or something like that, or running into them with a boat like bumper cars. It's something like that. They got sidetracked. They said, "Oh look, Filipino fishermen, let's ram them!" Like, and then they went off and went and did that. So the Chinese haven't shown up at least at this moment. But I gotta show you all the clip, folks, because this whole deal today was bizarre. Also, I gotta say, huge on the Russians for OPSEC, because I'm going to actually show y'all on Google Maps exactly where this ship is moored right now. So here it comes into Bandar Abbas. It goes past all the fishing boats, and actually, I'll wait for it to speed up here a little bit. So now they're down there in the, I guess you could say, the planning room of the Corvette. And like, yes, you see on the map, we're already in port, so this is completely pointless, is what they should be saying. And now they're pulling him in. So they actually brought this ship into an exact spot we can literally see on Google Maps. And it didn't even take me a lot to know where this is. It is right here. This pier is exactly where the Stoiky is currently moored at right now. And right next to the giant sampan fisherman fleet off to the left that hangs out over here on the daily. So they get to hang out near the rotting fish at the harbor, which is of high honor for them, I'm sure. We then have the one.
Also stupid, by the way. They're literally filming through their entire port here. It's like the entire port is being filmed. They couldn't have done better work for Western intelligence. We have satellite imagery, but we don't have like dash cam footage of what their port looks like. So fantastic on Russia for providing that.
Also, we have the one Iranian here. His name is Solvan. He's pulling the Corvette to port on his own, on his lonesome with one rope. I mean, Solvan here must be fairly strong because he's working hard. So I don't know what's up with this, folks. I didn't mention this in my video earlier today, but they had this child like wandering around everywhere. This one in particular. They put him on the ship, off the ship, near the bridge, off the bridge. They put this kid everywhere. I don't know what's up with the kid. Apparently the kid's really important. I
No, it's
don't.
propaganda. You know, bringing a child, and that's like the old like con man strategy. If you bring a kid in, it diffuses all suspicion and all hatred against people. They're like, oh look, it's a child. It's a child here. It's like, well, you know, the fact that you have like a foreign navy in your port that's hostile to the West. Also, Iran's threatening to blow the hell out of everybody in the region. It's like, you know, that's a con man tactic.
I'm not gonna lie, folks. I'm just gonna be a little bit upfront. This is one of the creepiest things ever, and y'all see as the video plays. It just comes off as creepy, like to me. But anyways, the kid hands over a bouquet to the captain. The captain's like, "Oh, thank you," and now he goes around shaking everyone's hands of the Iranian naval officers that are there. Now they come on board. This one Russian's holding a shitty little bugle. Hey, by the way, speaking of the bugle to get ready for racing, y'all ought to hear about this new gambling. I'm just kidding, by the way. But anyways, we can see the kid sitting over there. I guess in the captain's quarters, like in the office, just sitting there. Like it's like, what's up with the kid? Like I'm just gonna be straight up. That was the weirdest insert they could have ever done. Is just bringing around this random kid to sit around in random places of the ship. But they then hand over some crap. It looks like stuff you would get like from the dollar store gift shop down the way. And the kid's just still sitting there. And then the kid leads the captain off of the boat. Like, this kid literally was like the center stage thing of this whole event, which is the oddest thing to me. Like, they could have picked like a commander of the Iranian Navy or an admiral. They picked a kid. It's like, I don't even get it. But anyways, the captain goes off the ship. Then they go hang out in the crappy Iranian headquarters. Shake some more hands. And then they take some more pictures. And that was the end of the whole deal. So currently we know that they're refueling right now in Bandar Abbas because the ship was at its maximum range to be able to get here. And now they're going to be preparing to join the war games possibly tomorrow, which will be in a couple of hours our time right now on stream. It does appear that a lot of people are talking about this little stoiky doiky that's currently docked at Bandar Abbas. And a lot of people are putting in their comments on whether or not that's going to sway the United States. The fact that the Russians brought a tiny boat down there to Iran. So Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so will the U.S. attack while Russia is present at Bandar Abbas? Because right now we're only seeing the one Corvette Russian ship that's currently in port, and that's the only one that's there, as far as we can tell. And also, we've seen satellite footage of the entire port, and I've not seen any other Russian vessels there. So it appears like it is the sole vessel that Iran has coming to the rescue, and I don't think that's very much of a rescue. So, do you think that the U.S. will attack anyway? 61% said yes, they will attack anyway, while 22% said no, the U.S. will hold off while Russia in port, and 12% said I'm 50-50 on this one. And on this situation here, the one ship is definitely not going to prevent an attack, and I think even Russia knew that it would be probably very unwise to send a large fleet to Iran. Also, number two, they really can't afford to do that because they're obviously fighting a war of their own, so they can't just send a whole bunch of naval forces down to Iran just to make a photo op. That would be really stupid. So if Iran was apparently not disappointed by this, if I was Iran, I'd be disappointed as hell because that's basically no rescue at all. One Russian ship showing up, they might as well stay at home. So I think the U.S. is going to attack anyway. This will not have any effect whatsoever on the U.S.'s plans. And if anything, I think Russia is going to hightail it out of there once the planes start hitting Iran. I think they're going to hightail it out there like a dog with his tail tucked. But Enforcer, what say you?
Also, by the way, I got to say, folks, this is the sad thing about this. The Stoichi has actually apparently been in our news coverage before because the Stoichi is the exact same class of ship that the Ukrainians walked onto at Baltisk in the Baltisk Peninsula, if y'all remember this, walked right onto the ship, right into the main computer frame room, and threw a Molotov into it and completely burned the computer down in the main computer frame in the ship. And funnily enough, folks, that was the Admiral Grigorovich that happened to, and moored right next to it on the pier was the Stoichi. So the Stoichi has actually pretty much been in our news coverage before, as a matter of fact, back in about late 2023 when that accident, or more so not accident, that sabotage happened against the Admiral Grigorovich. So I've just read up really quickly on the Stoichi. The Stoichi apparently has taken out of Baltisk and into the area of the English Channel earlier in 2025 to conduct some basic harassment against the British, because that's always a fun pastime for the Russians. And then it sailed into the area of the Mediterranean. It then hung out in Egypt for a little bit and then hopped all the way over into East Asia, where it then was largely based out of Vladivostok for fueling and also rearming. And then it conducted some military exercises with the Chinese. And now, largely like we expected. It largely came out of Vladivostok, sailed all the way to Iran, and is involved in these war games currently. This one corvette is going to do nothing to anyone. It is an incredibly weak vessel. Corvettes are really not known for their absolute strength, and this thing definitely wouldn't be able to stand alone against the onslaught that would come against it if it tried to fire at the United States. So this thing is here just for a message of goodwill, hope, and prayers to the Iranians, and it's going to do absolutely nothing. Even if the Stoichi or the Russian government said, listen, if you do something to Iran where the Stoichi is there, we're going to try and boink you, and we're going to go, okay, what about it? And then we're going to bomb Iran anyways, and the Stoichi isn't going to do anything, because if the Stoichi tried to fire at the United States, we're going to obliterate the damn thing. And the Russians know that. We know that. That's not a smart idea. The captain on that ship knows that, and that's why the captain on that ship is not going to fire, because he knows that if he fires, everyone on board is going to get killed.
Yeah, Russia's not going to fire on nobody. Like Russia is there only for the photo op. And also it's very important. It's probably more important to Russia to get those photos showing that they're there, because Russia simply wants to make sure that their other allies around the world, whatever allies they have left, they want to try to make the image that Russia is not in the habit of simply abandoning their allies at times of need. So Russia is very concerned with getting that image out. Probably more concerned than Iran is with taking a picture with Russia, because Iran knows the U.S. is well aware that one Corvette class vessel is not going to be any match for the West. So it's not really deterring the U.S. attacks at all, but it is, of course, providing some service to Russia for propaganda value. Also, by the way, I see people asking about China. I don't think China's showing up. Like, these attacks are likely going to take place before China even shows up, if they do at all. Like, I don't think they're going to be there.
Right now, the Chinese have a sign up at their wharf at Bandar Abbas for the naval exercise. It says, out to lunch, beating up Filipino fishermen. And that probably is really what the Chinese Navy is doing that was supposed to be going to Iran, is that they're probably harassing the Filipinos and the Taiwanese instead. Maybe even the Japanese, because they're still kind of on that craze recently with the whole threats against Takaichi and all that deal. But anyways, moving on out of that, I don't think the Russians are going to be adding in a hill of beans of difference to anything. And I don't really think that the Russians are expecting that at this point, because there are a lot of sabotage actions that are going on the ground in Iran at this point that are generally giving us an idea that the Iranians are very unsecure. At least their secure facilities are very unsecure. In the area of the town of Perand, which is this suburb that was just newly built to the southwest of Tehran, and I mean, really look at this. This is high-end, folks. Look at it. It's a brand new development. No grass, just straight up dirt, and some high rises. And these high rises are apparently higher end, and this is where some of the well-to-do Iranians in Tehran apparently prefer to live, is in this suburb that has one main road that goes to it in the middle of basically nowhere on the southwestern corner of Tehran. But let me see if I can get you all a street view here, or at least give you all a little bit of a look at what this place looks like. This is what it looks like. This is actually a very trippy view. It looks like the world's like very curved here. But beyond that, though, this is what it looks like. And it doesn't really look that high-end, but apparently for Iran, this is. We have been able to hear that some sort of an underground bunker facility within the area of Paran has apparently exploded and then caught on fire immensely. We did get video and picture evidence of this fire that happened at this facility, which is a little odd.
Just random fires. Who would have guessed that the underground bunker just happened to have a little bit of a fire, just catch on fire like that? Who would have even known that was there?
Who would have ever thunk it? You know, who in the world would have ever known that there was a humongous bunker complex somewhere near Paran, and that thing is smoking? I mean, it is burning. Like, the whole day we've gotten videos of this thing just cooking, like this right here.
Man, they're playing some sick beats back there, I'm hearing.
Man, like it's, oh my god, it's Kid Rock. But anyways, oh man. Looks like a lot of Iranians took interest in this random part of a hillside that caught on fire, and it's not stopping the whole catching on fire part. And the reason why this happened, folks, turns out there is some sort of a bunker facility at Pavan, and it just caught on fire out of the blue. Now, that's a little bit odd, wouldn't y'all think? You know, a bunker complex catching on fire that basically nobody ever really knew about until today. Sounds like sabotage, and it is sabotage.
Man, the U.S. is busting bunkers before you even started dropping bombs, it looks like. It's like that. Also, by the way, it's like, what was down there for it to burn like that? Like, they've got some either fuel or something they're storing down there, because this is a pretty continuous fire. This is an inferno.
Man, honestly, you know something else that's kind of crazy? I guess there was nobody in this thing, or they panicked and ran away, because you could easily defeat a fire in a bunker by just closing off the air ventilation shafts and allowing the fire to be basically suffocated due to a lack of oxygen. But they didn't do that. The bunker is largely just burned out at this point completely, and it's still burning. I mean, like, even right now, from what we hear, it's still burning.
Also, they must have gotten a Starlink working in Iran, because how are they uploading those?
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think about that earlier. And lastly, folks, we got one last clip of the underground bunker on Fwaya, right here. Notice how the fire is coming from the hillside, not a particular building. It's just the hill. It appears that it's some sort of an air ventilation shaft that the smoke's coming out of.
Oh, that's a big fire. You can see the flames a little bit, like right below that roof or whatever that thing is right there in front of it. I don't know how something like that catches on fire. Like, for something to get that severe right there, like, you know, I didn't see reports of necessarily an explosion. They just said a fire took place. I'm like, interesting. I did hear some reports from some resident Iranians claiming that they heard some loud banging in the distance, but I wasn't able to confirm it. But very fascinating. If this is the U.S. or Israel, this is pretty crazy, because that means they're able to somehow get access to one of these bunkers, which are generally decently secure, and they're able to somehow start a fire or explode it somehow, which is pretty interesting.
You know, I gotta be straight up. I've heard, Matthew, that apparently it's actually Khamenei who's in that bunker, and a lot of people have always had this rumor, folks, that whenever Khamenei gets stressed, he starts chain smoking. And from what I've heard lately, he's very stressed. This is what the result is.
Man, I tell you what, he's gotten those unlucky strikes these days.
Man, I'm telling you, man, he's hotboxing in there. Man, he's a little smoky in there, you know. But anyways, moving on from that clip, we also saw something very similar happen down near Shiraz, which is down within the southern area of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and it appears that this explosion was fairly large as well, but this one had solid white smoke. Now, Matthew, the rule on smoke is that if it's black, it is most likely some sort of material that's burning. If the smoke is white, then it is
probably chemical, I'd imagine.
ammunition. It's ammunition that's usually on fire when smoke is white, and it appears that the smoke is solid white, which is leading us to believe that some sort of an air defense munitions store near Shiraz apparently also caught on fire and exploded today as well. And that's generally kind of the news that we've been hearing around this, is that it may have been some sort of an air defense munitions cache. Oh, the sirens are going on. They're apparently trying to respond to it. Sad thing, they don't really.
And what does that mean when you hear sirens?
That means bad things are happening.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
And they really are. Like, and you know, in some other parts of the country, the Iranians are trying to, you know, see that bad things, as in, at least from the Iranian perspective, their crappy government getting overthrown, doesn't happen. And it appears that that's still going to be a little bit hard-pressed, especially for the Iranians. The unrest and the uprisings, which I just blended into one word, are still ongoing. And we were able to see in Najafabad, which is right outside of Isfahan, that it seems that there are still large protests and uprisings ongoing. They seem angry.
That looks like a largely peaceful protest, despite them being slightly irritated.
You know, I've heard that they've actually burned down a couple of besieged headquarters today, but it is mostly peaceful. I mean, like, you know, like, man, you know, they have ended up dragging out a couple of IRGC guys into the streets, you know, and generally finishing them off, but they are mostly peaceful. Like, but anyways, beyond that, outside of the jokes that we're making here, we did get to see that they did burn a besieged headquarters to the ground today in Sabzavar, and they did it quite well. I mean, this thing is basically like Chinese fireworks. Like,
damn, son.
I don't know what they had in the besieged headquarters, but it apparently was extremely flammable.
Must have like thermite, a mixture of everything flammable. What, they have rocket fuel they're storing in there?
I don't know, dude, but look at this. This is interesting. There are little pieces, chunks of something that are on fire and flying around out of the smoke. I don't know what it is, but look at that. There's loads of it.
I don't know what that is. What is that, documents or something? It looks like documents flying out.
Documents, maybe. I have no clue what they are, really. I mean, like, this has been a mystery to me, even when we showed this earlier today. I don't know what that stuff is that's flying out of the fire. But, you know, they are mostly peaceful. They are mostly peaceful. They're just voicing their frustrations against the Iranian government, which is, you know, of course, massacred 40,000 of them a month ago. And it appears that they haven't really forgotten about that, and they're now taking out their frustrations as best they can by literally burning the Iranian government facilities to the ground. In the meantime, we did get to see that up within Tehran, there is an ongoing blackout happening as well right now, and also further on down in Isfahan, returning back to this news, it also appears that we were able to see that the Institute for the Study of War is also once again speaking on the ongoing uprisings or protests that are happening with Iran. We were able to confirm the following as along with the Institute for the Study of War: the ones around Abzavar and Mashhad, the ones near Isfahan, the ones near the area of Abdanan, which is in the western part of Iran, and also some smaller ones in Tehran, although we haven't gotten a lot of videos of those. So that currently seems to be the epicenters that we're seeing right now, and we're still trying to make sure to get further information on that and how much momentum these are beginning to gain again. It appears that our analysis originally, which I do have to point out, was apparently inaccurate about the willpower of the Iranian protesters, actually heavily more so underestimated their willpower, as we do see that they are once again taking to the streets, even with the threat of death still looming over them, basically every time they step out in the streets and say anything to criticize the Iranian regime. Still, the Iranian government is trying their best to prepare themselves for what is to come, the trials and tribulations that will soon happen. The Iranians are preparing their nuclear sites once again, as we did get to see on satellite photography and picture evidence, for an incoming U.S. strike or an attempt to completely destroy the nuclear facilities. We also saw similar preparations being conducted at Parchin, as this satellite picture here shows what a Parchin nuclear facility looked like on the 13th of December 2025, and what it looks like today, once again covered with a significant amount of soil to try and protect it as much as physically possible from incoming strikes by the United States.
Yeah. Also, by the way, it's even worse than that. Like, if you go back to the image, you can actually see that if you go back and compare it with, actually, let me go ahead and get you this other one, actually, by the way. I just reposted it on our Twitter page. Go grab the one from the Institute for the Study of War real quick. This one shows you the full progression of what they've done at Parchin, which is one of their nuclear sites, by the way. You can see they added a concrete sarcophagus to it, and then they added a layer of soil on top of it even after that. So they've been fortifying this for a minute, because it looks like they've been fortifying it at least for a month and a half or longer, possibly. That's as long as they've been like pouring the concrete, putting the soil on top of it. So Iran has known for a while that they needed to go ahead and shore up these facilities, and they've had plenty of time to get it done. So, I mean, hopefully the U.S. hurries up, because they'll probably fortify it even more than that.
Yeah, I would have to say so. And I got to say that it is really something else how much they're trying to prepare for this. I think they're generally getting an idea that they kind of just blew the whole thing in Geneva, which was their plan, but I also think they're understanding how bad this is about to become. Moving on from all of that, though, in Tehran and generally within the rest of the country, it is time for us to move on down to probably one of the biggest pieces of news outside of the fact that the Israelis are generally conducting their wartime preparations in the Middle East, which is this next piece of news. A NOTAM has been declared over the eastern part of Tehran. This is the yellow area here in which the NOTAM has been declared. According to Iranian NOTAM declarations, this area has been declared a no-fly zone because they are going to be conducting launches of anti-ship missiles tomorrow within this area, meaning that anti-ship missile launches are imminent within the next 24 hours from the stream running right now. Interesting enough, this also seems to be showing a general trajectory for these anti-ship missiles, where they exit into the Gulf of Oman, which is about right here, and the USS Abraham Lincoln is somewhere in this area down here. Now, this missile will clearly be out of range, or the Lincoln will be out of range by the time the missile makes it to the Gulf of Oman. But it still is a little bit interesting that they're generally trying to fire an anti-ship missile kind of towards the direction of the USS Abraham Lincoln. I think they're trying to make the message clear that they'll start firing them directly at the Lincoln if a greater war starts, which, best of luck to them. I don't really think a lot of them will make it through. And also, that's a little bit interesting, don't y'all think, folks, that they're having to show off their anti-ship missiles? I thought, according to some expert U.S. analysts the other day, who just oddly worked for a Russian company, that the Iranians were going to easily destroy all of our aircraft carriers with hypersonic missiles. Why do they have to show off that their anti-ship missiles work if that's the case? That would make no sense. That's like showing off that, you have slings that you can use properly with a couple of rocks when you have a rifle. What would be the point of that? Wouldn't you want to show off the rifle instead of the, sling with the rocks or the bow and the arrow, A little bit weird with that. Don't you think, Matthew?
Yeah, I would say definitely very, very weird. It seems like Iran is basically trying their best. It's like, if an animal gets cornered, it's going to start like growling, jumping, and leaping and stuff to scare people away. That seems like what Iran's doing right now. These are desperate attempts to try to scare the U.S. off. It's pretty much all they can do. I think they have a strong idea, though, that none of this is going to scare the U.S. away. Like, the U.S. isn't scared off by a couple of anti-ship missiles. That's not going to do it. But they have to put on a show like they're ready to go. So, it's very desperate. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I would have to agree. It definitely does appear to be desperate. And a lot of people are actually talking about this at this very moment right now and wondering if this is some sort of a prelude to an Iranian attack against U.S. naval vessels that are currently near to the area. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so what do you think? Is this a prelude for attack? Because Iran appears to be about to fire what seems to be probably anti-ship missiles toward the Strait of Hormuz. At least that's where the NOTAM has been issued for. It looks like a huge swath of their country's airspace, including into the Strait. So are they going to preemptively attack Israel, the U.S., or somebody? Or is it really a test? And it looks like people are pretty much all over the place. They're split on this question. It looks like 37% said yes, Iran plans to attack preemptively and probably using this as a prelude, while 35% said no, Iran is really doing a test, and 21% said only time's going to tell on this one, we'll have to wait and see. And I have a hard time believing that Iran's going to attack preemptively, because if they did something like that, that's going to basically force the U.S. to do everything possible. I mean, go all out, like possibly even bigger than what they were planning to respond to it. Because I would assume that if the U.S. gets caught off guard, there could be casualties. That's a possibility. So it'd probably trigger something way worse than what was going to happen anyway. And I'd imagine that Iran knows that, so they'll probably wait, because it really costs Iran nothing to wait. It allows them to prepare and also allows the U.S. to prepare as well for the upcoming war. So I think they're going to wait. I think they're really doing a test. Of course, it's intimidation, but I think it really is a test. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that they're definitely going to do it as a test as well. I'd be with the 35%, because the Islamic Republic of Iran trying to conduct a preemptive attack against a U.S. carrier group would be paramount to an instant death for the Iranians. The strike would be shot down pretty easily by the U.S. Navy, and then we would see that the U.S. counter-response would almost begin effective immediately at that point, and our war planning wouldn't be conducted within the next few days leading into the weekend. It would start as soon as those strikes, or attempted strikes against the carrier group, would begin. I think a lot of people always kind of overestimate our enemy's capabilities and greatly underestimate our own in terms of a defensive scenario. A carrier strike group alone has about 300 or so air defense missiles that they are able to fire at any given moment. And that's not 300 and then they only get to fire off 2 at a time. Each destroyer can largely target dozens of air targets at the same time and fire at dozens of them simultaneously, meaning that it'd be pretty easy for the U.S. Navy's carrier strike group of the Abraham Lincoln to easily defeat any attack by the Iranians that was attempted against the carrier group. Not only that, the carrier group doesn't have to just stick around and run out of ammo. They have this cool thing called propulsion systems, and what they do is that they turn south and they start sailing away from where they're getting shot at. Very easy sort of a thing to do, and it's actually foolproof, crazily enough, because no matter how much the Iranians would want to blow up the carrier, they just can't reach it, It's kind of like how if you wanted to, punch some guy in the face and you were, stuck in the ground in cement, and you, threw your fist at the guy, and then you just backed up about 5 steps, it'd be kind of hard to sock the guy in the nose at that point, because he's a little too far away. Same thing there. And also, you could just block the punch and then back away a little bit for, waiting for your next punch. That's generally how a carrier strike group would operate in that sort of a scenario. I always find it funny that people, whenever they talk about the Iranians, they're like, oh, if the carrier sits in the same spot in the same place and the Iranians fire like 900 missiles at it, they might sink it. It's like, that's not going to happen. It's like, one, they don't have 900 missiles. Two, it's not going to sit there and just take that and not run away. I mean, that would be stupid.
Yeah, I think also, by the way, even if Iran tried to do something like that and tried to attack the carrier, they should probably go ahead and suggest to the Ayatollah to download Duolingo and start learning Russian immediately. If he even has the chance to get to Russia at that point, he needs to probably go ahead and learn Russian, because I think he's going to be stuck in an apartment in Moscow at this rate.
Man, he's gonna be sitting there. Yes, aircraft carrier that they claim that we destroy has beaten my ass. I'm running to Moscow immediately, inshallah.
Do you think he's going to become a gamer too, like Al Assad? Do you think he's going to do that, or is he going to do something different?
Man, I feel like Khamenei is more of a guy who would paint, for in his free time. Like, honestly, he seems like a guy who wouldn't really understand gaming.
Yeah, it seems like it, probably so. I'm just not sure what he can do. Like, it was kind of interesting that Assad was a gamer. Like, I didn't know that. So apparently he's obsessed. Like, that's the reports. He's in an apartment in Moscow, absolutely obsessed with like top tier, grade A video games or something. So apparently that's what he does all the time. But the Ayatollah, he doesn't strike me as a gamer. In fact, I'm not even sure if he knows how to use a gaming console, to be honest. So who knows what he'll be doing in his spare time? He'll have to find that out, though. He'll have plenty of time to think it over.
It's crazy, man. I just saw in the chat, dude. Like, literally everyone started to answer your question because, the chat folks has a 30-second delay. Everyone was like, I think Khamenei would be a painter. Basically, everyone's like, this guy would be a painter. I mean, you see, like, I'm not going to lie, like, no dissing on painters because some people do really good at painting. But this guy seems like he's very dull. And I'm not, like, I don't even think his paintings would be that creative. I think they'd be fairly bland and boring. They wouldn't be anything that would be inspiring or artful. It would just be lame, really. I mean, he might become a modern artist, he might just fling shit on a canvas and sell it for like 15 million. That would definitely be a way for him to make a living. Like, like a lot of people would be like, I have a painting from a former dictator of Iran, and it's just like a whole bunch of paint and crap put on a canvas with no actual reasoning behind it or anything. That's decently likely, maybe. But anyways, moving on from that whole deal with the Iranian anti-ship missiles, there are just a few more things that we do have to cover within the Middle East. One, we have to show y'all another snapshot of the large amount of flights that were being conducted today. And we also have to show y'all, additionally, the little bit of news that we got about the THAAD batteries. The Pentagon has deployed THAAD and Patriot air defense systems at approximately 20 bases across Jordan, Kuwait, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar. U.S. forces have also been positioned at strategic points on the Iran-Turkmenistan border and in Armenia. I'll be honest with y'all, Turkmenistan allowing U.S. forces inside their country is a bit of an interesting move. But we already know about the U.S. forces in Azerbaijan. They're in Baku. But I don't really know about the whole U.S. forces in Turkmenistan thing, because Turkmenistan, if y'all don't know, it's actually the Central Asian equivalent of North Korea. It pretty much operates the same way as North Korea in every aspect. They have no freedom of speech. People who deride the government disappear, most likely into work camps or gulags off in the middle of nowhere. They basically allow for no one to travel through the country freely. They do not allow any freedom of press. They do not allow really any outside media. They have absolutely insane laws, and they have absolutely insane economic policies, but the only reason why, folks, they get away with it and nobody talks about them is that Turkmenistan is not a divisive country, because they operate their foreign policy off of the idea of extreme neutrality, not militant neutrality like Switzerland, but extreme neutrality to where they never piss anyone off, to where they cross anyone's radar. So they are nice to the Russians, they're nice to us, they're nice to China, they're nice to Iran, they're nice to everybody. They don't really want anybody looking at them and paying attention to what's going on in Turkmenistan. So I would find it a little bit weird if they allowed U.S. forces in, because that would generally be going against their extreme and avid neutrality that they exercise as their policy. So a little bit weird with that one, but we'll see if that ends up panning out to be correct. Anyways, with that, folks, it is time for us to finally move on out of the Middle East and on into the larger news that we have throughout the day that is not in the Middle East, which includes a little bit of news out of North Korea and a good amount of news out of Russia and Ukraine. But before we get on into that, though, folks, I do have to say, that we are entirely honored again to see that so many people have joined us once again tonight for another night of news. We've had a peak viewership tonight of about 19.4 thousand people. Ole mole! And also on top of that, we've had about 105,000 people watch this channel so far. I've got to say that we're always massively appreciative and extremely grateful that so many people continue to choose this channel to be their primary source of news. We put a lot of work and effort into this each and every single day to try and make this news possible and to make sure that all of y'all can hear what's going on around the world, hopefully in the best researched and best presented form that can possibly be provided. If y'all have enjoyed it so far, please make sure to subscribe. We would love to have y'all here. And the Elite Spring Army is continuing to grow, which is our community, every single day. We actually, in the midst of the stream, have surpassed 535,000 subscribers. Isn't that amazing?
Oh, nice.
Amazing. And not only that, folks, the Enforcer channel is one of the top 100 YouTube channels in America, being number 38 yesterday. So please make sure to subscribe. We would love to have you all here, and you'll be joining a growing community that actually listens to real foreign policy news and developments around the world instead of just the garbage that's put out by like CNN, Fox, or another news agency like that. But before we move on into the rest of our news tonight, I do want to make sure to take a brief moment to take 3 questions from the chat and to thank a couple of the people who go over their way to support this channel and help to make it possible for the millions of people who watch The Enforcer every single month. So, Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so let's jump into our first 3 Super Chat questions here. Our first one is going to go to none other than BC Skyman, who puts in a combined $120 support. And thank you very much, BC, for that support, by the way. We do appreciate that very, very much. And of course, that is very much appreciated because it is that support, like we say all the time, that keeps our whole operation going. And it's thanks to folks like BC Skyman supporting the channel that makes it all possible. And also, I hope you had a good cruise, by the way. I saw that video that you put on your channel from that. It's pretty cool. But Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you humongously for the support and helping the channel to keep on running, BC Scamming. And I gotta say that folks like you are who make this channel completely possible. And while you didn't throw in a comment, we know that you have nothing but amazing things to say because we see it in the live chat all night long. And we thank you incredibly for being an integral part of the Lee Spring Army, a pillar of the amazing armed force. Well, not really armed force, correction there. Sorry, I have to clarify that. It's just a community, a fan community that has been able to spring up around the entirety of the globe. It is truly a global force, and you're one of the key people who are a part of the face of the LSA, and so humongous thanks to you once again for that incredible support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I also got to say, folks, by the way, I find this so funny because we've had a bot storm tonight. Matthew's been banning them left and right, but it's funny, folks, because from day to day, because once again, folks, just to make it clear for new folks here, we don't take any political stand. We just go with what is in the interest of the United States and the Western world. Recently, we have been told that we are extreme far left because we criticize the president. Now because we're saying that striking Iran is good, which we've been saying for years, whether it was the last president or current president, now we have a flood of bots coming in tonight saying that we're actually a hard right MAGA channel. Like it literally, it's just the funniest thing to watch it happen in real time because it doesn't matter what we say and how much we stick with it. It just matters whatever the prevailing political climate is, and if we're going against that, people just come in here and absolutely try and pile drive us, or they send a bot swarm in to try and pile drive us on what is clearly in America's interests. When we were against Venezuela, we were clearly liberal snowflakes. Now when we're for striking Iran because they pose a significant national security threat, now apparently we're far right. It's a hilarious thing to watch happen in real time. I gotta say, I'm getting a laugh out of it. But anyways, with that, the humongous thanks to you so much once again for support, BC Skyman. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our second super chat is going to go to none other than Hugh. And thank you very much, Hugh, for that $100 support. Very generous of you, and we appreciate it once again tonight. Hugh's been supporting the channel tremendously as of recent, and we appreciate that. He said, well, at church on Sunday, I asked my Russian Orthodox priest if it was okay to pray for money. He said a hard no, but I did it anyway. Here's what's messed up. I got answered and sent it to the enforcers. Sincerely, Lieutenant Dan from Pittsburgh Barracks.
And I gotta thank you so much for the incredible support. And I gotta say that I think the reason why, let's see, interesting. Like, I think the reason why they might have said that is because they might have gotten word from the Russian Patriarch, because the Russian Orthodox Church does adhere to whatever the Patriarch says, say that they no one can pray for money anymore. And I think that's probably why he said that to you. That's really interesting.
That's a joke.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah, that's supposed to be. He was joking.
Man, the way you read them straight. I'm like, take them for what they are. But I mean, that was a good
Well,
joke.
if your Orthodox priest did say that, it could mean that he was actually trying to possibly pass you some of that hard cash, that currency.
Man, that's just petty cash, man, as Krill says, wearing 18 different gold embroidered outfits. Beyond that, I gotta thank you massively for the support. I actually didn't catch on that was a joke, but I do thank you incredibly for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, keep it running, and have an absolute goof like that on air, where I just sit there and assume that was face value, and it was actually a joke, which sometimes...
You gonna blame me for the way I read it, for him not catching the joke. You gonna blame me for the way...
I'm not blaming you. I'm not blaming you. It's just that you read it in a way where, you know, it didn't carry any punchline to it. Like, it's like, I went there and I prayed anyways. I was like, huh. I was like, that's interesting. The guys...
You don't understand. I don't know the punchlines either. I'm just reading these things fresh off the dome. Like, I'm just reading this thing right here. I don't know where the punchline is. Like, this thing could take a hard left turn or a hard right turn. I'm not trying to be political here. It could go any which way possible. I'm just not sure.
Here's my question, folks. Where's the punchline? And what type of punch are they serving? That's what I'm wondering.
I'm not trying to punch you. I'm just trying to tell you the joke.
No. I mean, like fruit punch or something like that, you know?
I mean, I guess. I mean,
you know, I wanna like slam dunk a pineapple onto the concrete. You know, that's what I'm talking about right there. You know, a fruit punch.
Okay.
Oh, well, anyway.
Now, see, that's monotone. Now, that's a joke right there I can't get because the way he said it. You know, you were the one making the punchline. Didn't even get the joke.
Man, I gotta say, I mean, like, you know, we're just gonna move on. But humongous thanks to you once again for support, Hugh, and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to have pretty funny moments like this on air, and we also wouldn't be able to keep this channel rolling for hundreds of thousands and millions of people every single month. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we're on to the final question of the segment, and then we're gonna be moving on into the rest of the news. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and this one is going to go to none other than Flying Fart of Freedom, who puts in a $100 support. And thank you very much, Burr, for that $100 support, and we appreciate that very much. They did not leave a comment, however, but we do appreciate that a whole bunch. That's very generous support from you, and we might see the Burr maybe in action one more time or so. We'll have to see. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. If it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. We wouldn't be able to keep it running. And maybe one day we'll see the back in action again. That'd be pretty neat to see. And, you know, I'm just wondering, if you're on the receiving end of that, do you ever hear the sound, or do you just, you know, go out? And well, we actually know the answer to that. You just go out. You actually hear the sound of the gun after the impact of the round. So we kind of know the answer to that one, but it is still an interesting question to ask, you know. But a humongous thanks to you once again for that incredible support and helping this channel to keep it running. And who knows, if we gain absolute air superiority or air supremacy over Iran, we might actually see the A-10 taking a couple of rounds out there at targets here and there. But a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, folks, it's time for us to move on out of the middle of the East and time for us to move on into East Asia, where we were able to hear in North Korea today that the North Koreans have apparently unveiled a brand new transport erector launcher. That's not really that like crazy, honestly. Like, it's a new vehicle that carries a nuke. That's all they unveiled today. So that took them about, you know, like 10 years, about 500,000 people lost in the gulags to eventually create a brand new TEL. So, you know, it's interesting, but, you know, it's not going to be anything scary. It's not like they made a new ICBM that was extremely capable. It's just that they made a new truck that can carry an ICBM. Moving on out of Korea, it's time for us to get on into something that actually matters, which is the Russian Federation, the Rossiyskiy Federatsiy. And we have a lot of news, a lot of it, coming out of the Russian Federation. Moving us on into Moscow. It appears that the next bankruptcy was in Moscow, so it appears that Putin's claim that he made in Alaska of next time in Moscow was true, at least in one way. The next bankruptcy was in Moscow. We were able to hear that today, another oil company has declared bankruptcy. The VTB State Bank is plans to file for bankruptcy of the First Oil Group, which operates in the Komi and Kansy-Mansi Autonomous Okrug. That sounds like something that an ogre would live in, an okrug. Or an OK rug. You can read that either way. Its annual production is up to 500,000 tons. The company's accumulated about 6 billion rubles in debt. That's about 600 million US dollars in debt. At the end of 2025, the Yangper Oil Company also fell under the bankruptcy procedure, and earlier than that, in 2025, the Astrakhan Oil Company and the Gorny Oil Company also went bankrupt and were due to be claimed by the tax service. It appears that this is the first major casualty in the Russian oil industry of 2026, the first oil group. And I think that they're now going to be the last oil group because they're being liquidated effective today. So it looks like the Russian economic quagmire has claimed another victim, which apparently is the first oil group. And this is something that we've been knowing for a while. Russian oil companies are hemorrhaging money significantly at this point, due to the absolutely abysmal economic conditions that they're under, and also due to the fact that they really can't export their oil anywhere easily. This is meaning that a lot of them are not even breaking even, a lot of them are hemorrhaging money basically on the daily, and it also does appear that as a result of that, they are seeing that they're going down the drain. Basically, the whole economy is going down the drain at this point, and a lot of people are, of course, seeing that the writing's on the wall at this point. I don't really think the Russian economy can survive, considering that their main function, at least the oil industries, cannot even operate any longer due to the strain. Moving on from that, and on into the next major piece of news that we were able to hear on Moscow today, we also heard that apparently Telegram and WhatsApp, according to some sources in Russia, are apparently being banned because Russia is preparing to announce full mobilization. And that is why they wanted to make sure to get everyone on Messenger Max, so that way if any dissent or heavy public revolt is seen against this, they'll be able to find out who it is, what they're saying, what they're about to do, and then stop them before they're about to do anything, including just getting out in the streets to protest. It seems that at this point, the Russian government is getting pretty desperate. That's obviously clear, and the Russian Federation is trying their hardest at this point to be able to show that they can try and keep control of the situation, and that the Russian citizens really will live on bread and water alone to see that the war comes to an inevitable victory. Clearly, that the Russians will always be able to achieve, even if they don't have any money, tanks, or guns to fight a war with. And a lot of people are wondering, is that true? Are the Russians actually about to declare some sort of a mass mobilization soon, and that's why they banned Telegram and Messenger Max? Or was it really just because they were scared of the ability of the Russians to coordinate without the Russian government really being able to see what they're saying, and be able to stop that before it was happening, whether or not they were going to call a full mobilization? And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so remember that the main ban on Telegram right now is for the Russian military. That's very important, by the way, because right now the Russian public can still access Telegram in one way or another, but the Russians are planning on actually fully banning Telegram apparently in the next month or 2 months ahead. So it's mainly targeting the military, which is having the really big impacts on the front lines. It's, of course, messing with their ability to coordinate and also plan for future defensive actions against the advancing Ukrainian forces. So now we're hearing reports coming today that Putin ordered the Telegram ban to prepare for upcoming mass mobilization, and apparently Putin's expecting some very strong backlash when he announces that, if that is indeed the case. So what are your thoughts? 60% said Putin will mass mobilize soon, while 18% said Putin will not mass mobilize, and 16% said he's probably just paranoid and doing this for his own goodwill, I guess you could say. So this one's a bit tough because, like I said, right now the citizens can still access Telegram somewhat. So mass mobilization would mainly be something that the civilians would be upset about. The military wouldn't be so upset about it because they're already in it. They're already on the front lines. So I'm not entirely convinced. We have, of course, heard that the Russians are currently doing what's known as a rolling mobilization, where they're silently grabbing people off the streets and not really publicizing it that they're doing it, but they are mobilizing thousands of people into the military still. And the one thing that we haven't gotten to quite yet, but we're about to in the news, is Ukraine is retaking 200 plus square kilometers of territory in their recent offensives. So that would lend credibility to the idea that a mobilization could be coming soon, because the Russians are getting pushed back at the worst rate, the fastest rate since 2023. So I'm personally on the fence. I'm in between. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that I would be with a 50-50 crowd as well. It's really hard to say because conducting a full mobilization would be an absolute deception that the Russian government would have pulled on the Russian public, because they have promised for 4 straight years now avidly that they would never conduct a full mobilization. It would be an absolute dire circumstance they would do that in, and the Ukraine war is not one of those. And if they tried to announce one of those right now, I think that they're probably going to see whether or not Messenger Max is the main communication system or not, that the entire Russian public is going to revolt against that, because they have been living off of the premise that the war in Ukraine isn't that bad and that it doesn't need a full mobilization and that it's a cinch and that it's going to be easy to win and all that. And then that would throw all that completely on its head, because if they're doing so well, why do they need to conduct a mass mobilization? So I'm kind of on the 50-50 on that. It would probably be viewed by the Russian government as necessary now to even try and get a leg up in the war, but I'd also say that I think that that's probably going to be a little bit hard-pressed to see as well, due to the promises and the endless guarantees that they've made about not doing that very thing. Moving on out of that, though, in Moscow, we've also been able to see that the little refinery up at Utka, a pretty good ways away from Ukraine, about 1,100 miles away, was obliterated again today. Take a look. Aliuti. Oh!
Oh, the block is hot. The gangs are firing.
Oh, damn, it's O-Block. It's Chirac. Like, oh.
It's the Bloods. The Bloods are, oh my God. Oh my God. Oh. Oh man, it hit.
Now, you know,
Pounded it.
You know, folks, before we played this video, we were actually wondering, wouldn't it be great if we were able to have all of y'all, you know, say bet on this? but anyways, beyond that, whether or not it's going to hit the refinery. But anyways, beyond that, though, it does appear that this drone did directly hit the area of the refinery, and that it was quite a successful hit, I'd have to say. It looks like there was already a couple of drones that hit before, and, you know, Zelensky is out there. He's pretty happy with those results. Those are some of the longest range strikes we've ever seen, and they are absolutely landing them right on target. We also saw within the area of Shepagasari, which is on the Volga River, that the Veneer Progress plant was also hit within the area, which apparently manufactures antennas, including some that are used for communications on the front lines in Ukraine. Oh, look at that. That's a giant fireball on the ground, and that's a giant plume of smoke right there.
Look at this superpower, warding off these attacks like a real superpower.
Yeah,
It's crazy how smoky it is. Look, it's like a bear.
Man, in the middle of you talking, just, it's crazy how smoky it is, it's smoky, but you know, like, man, it's like... Bro, it was literally like 2 seconds of a clip. It's crazy how smoky it is, and then it just moves on immediately.
Some of these, like,
Christmas lights.
these disco lights out here.
Oh, emergency Buhanka on the way. Oh, and oh! Dude, that thing's glowing.
That's the party members. They're going out there to check on Chernobyl, see if they see graphite on the ground.
Listen, Dyatlov. Word came down from the top. Safety inspection's got to be done. It's not on us. It's on them. Go ahead and do it.
You know, they got the invisible hand pushing from above.
You know what the Chernobyl power plant is really called? It is called the Leningrad Nuclear Power Installation. And it is a great thing what all of you sons of the revolution are doing here today. And our actions...
Cut the phone lines.
There we go.
Stop the spread of misinformation. We can't allow this to spread.
Man, you beat me to the punch on that one, bro. We're just gonna start quoting Chernobyl lines the rest of the night. But I mean, that thing does look like it's, you know, a little scary to get close to. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, that looks just like the opening scene out of Chernobyl on the HBO miniseries. But don't worry, everyone. It's just 3.6 Rontgen. Not great, not terrible. Or as the party official said,
it's just 3.6 Rontgen. Not great, not terrible.
But moving on from that, we also got to see up in Skov something similar happen. And also, by the way, forgot to mention y'all, Skov was also on our news a little while ago, about 1.5 years ago, because the little airbase right outside of Skov, which is right here, was actually hit in about late 2024, if I'm not mistaken, by some Ukrainian drones, which blew away a couple of IL-76s. I think it was like 3 of them here at this airfield. So this city has been on our news coverage before. It was just a while ago. We did get to see that they did hit the oil depots here, and they appeared to be cooking. Cooking with oil. Delicious oil. We also get to see another clip of that right here. You know, I've heard that every time a drop of oil is burned in Russia, an American president sheds a tear.
Send in a drone strike. Oh, whoops, wrong place.
Fool me once, shame on you.
burn my oil, I'm gonna cry like a baby. Like, man, man, I've heard, man, that Dick Cheney, even in the great beyond, weeps immensely whenever oil burns needlessly in the world. No, like it's not ours. Like, man, anyways.
Пизда. Пизда, все, нефтебаза горит.
Летит, Артем, летит.
Oh, what's this?
Летит где-то, слышишь?
I hear a crapper.
I hear a little beater. Oh, is it gonna hit?
Вон он, летит.
Воно, блядь. Из
Летит,
башни.
летит, смотри.
О, это ты, сенсацио.
Слышишь, прилетел. Охуеть.
There it
Смотри,
is.
Артем.
Охуеть.
Охуеть, прилетел.
Oh,
Бежим все,
man.
бежим! Вьетнам,
Look at these
бежим!
people. Oh, man, this lady's going crazy. Look at these people running out of this building over here. They saw a whole conga line of people.
Бежим все, бежим! Вьетнам, бежим!
Man, this woman's kind of a little wild. I was like, calm down, woman. It's about a half-mile away. It's no big deal. You know, it's like Ukrainians aren't going to hit y'all. They're not the Russians, after all. They don't target innocent civilians.
Бежим! Бежим!
Oh, dang.
Dang!
That guy just got the spirit to run away. He just just out of the blue just took off.
That's like an
Look at him.
NPC, bro. He just turned around and executed the run script instantly after standing there for a little bit. Also, what is this?
Man,
The
that's
clown
that
car
herd
building?
mentality. That's the herd mentality that I was talking about. You know, they always say whenever someone like sees like a crowd running, like you just can't fight the instinct to run with the crowd. Like I think this guy right here proved the point.
Yeah, I mean, damn. I mean, like, bro, the guy's in the middle of like calmly filming from like a quarter or a half mile away, and then out of the blue, he's like, "Oh, time to run," and then just started running. It's like, yeah, it's a half mile away. It's no big deal, I promise you. But moving on out of Skov, we also saw that down in Smolensk, they were also under attack here as well. Oh, this guy is going to give us the ASMR experience. It's outside. It's going to blow us away, bleh.
Вон нахуй, ебать там облако нахуй. Вон там въебало, короче, это пизда. Я, короче, валяюсь нахуй на кровати, блядь. Вижу вот
What's he
тут
turning around
нахуй
to show us?
светану.
I'm
He
showing
got
you
me
the,
shook for a minute.
I'm showing
What
you
was
the
he doing?
void.
Turning the camera around.
I'm showing you the void where the monster lives. But yeah, like it lives in the closet.
Было как нахуй, вот там въебало, бля, это пизда.
Well, anyways, moving on from that clip, we also got to see that down in the area of Bryansk, there was a large drone attack that was detected by the Russians today, which of course sent them into a panic. Some of these drones went up to Pskov, some of them went on to, Cheboksary, some of them went all the way out there to Utka, some of them ended up in Bryansk. And, of course, we cannot go without mentioning that today, the Belgorodskayans we're just about to get electricity again, by the way. Like, the water situation is screwed. Like, they're not going to have water until April, that no matter what. But they were about to get their electricity back today. The Russians had just put enough spit and duct tape back on the Belgorod thermal power plant to try and get it running again. And as soon as Zelensky heard wind of that, he said, "We must make sure that the Russians know not to mess with us again. Bomb the thermal power plant the 90th time." And they hit it again and knocked it completely offline again. It was just about to come back online. And in these clips, you can hear and see the explosions once again on the thermal power plant. This is like the 9th day in a row that they bombed this thermal power plant, by the way.
Ой.
There
Ой,
it
ебать,
is.
прилет, блядь.
He's
Опять
not
на
again,
Белгородскую
yeah.
ТЭЦ. Второй прилет. Да вы че ёбнулись, блядь?
This guy's so loud, he's echoing through the whole town. Like, you hear his like voice echoing off the buildings out in the distance. But it's like, dang, man, like, how many times can you repair a power plant? Like, this thing has been hit more times than I can even count. Like, Zelensky has been pounding this thing night after night after night. And how can they keep repairing it?
Man, Zelensky be like, F Russia, but particularly Belgrade. F them's particularly. Bomb them again. Like, it's like, damn, bro. It's like, how many times can you hit one power plant? And I mean, like, here's another clip of it again. Like, they are obliterating this thermal power plant. I'll be honest with y'all, folks. If we ever get a real picture of the thermal power plant at this point, I bet you it's just going to look like a crumbled wreck with some intact boilers inside of it, like inside of the destroyed frame. And that's all that's going to be left at this point. Because they have literally hit this thing every day almost for about a week and a half now. There's the hit. Again.
This person was smart enough not to open the window.
Oh, there's a second one. That's it. Damn. Oh, there's a third. Dude, the Ukrainian...
bomb it again. Like, I want to see that thing turn into rubble.
They said, close the blinds. We can't watch this. Zelensky's pounding the town again.
I'm coming in hard. Scratch that.
Oh, whoa. I do not say anything like that.
I'd be pounding Belgrade like I was pounding those piano keys in that comedy skit.
I tell you what, they're really giving it to Belgrade, though.
Man. Oh, man. I can't believe how many times they've hit this thing. I mean, like, at some point, it started feeling like they have a thing against Belgrade. Like, this isn't anymore for strategic purposes. They just don't like Belgrade for some reason. And they mean they're going to show it. They're going to keep the power out in Belgrade the rest of the winter season, apparently. And let me get y'all down there to Belgrade, and let me see if I can show y'all that thermal power plant. Let's see here. Where is that thermal power plant, Matthew, relative to the city? It's kind of close to the city itself. I'm trying to think, where in the world is it?
I usually just type it in, like usually. That's what I usually do.
I don't like to do that. Like, let's see. Well, that ain't it.
Man, it's like maybe like a substation or something. That's definitely not the power plant.
Let's see. That's the thermal grid company. So let me see if I can pull up the thermal power plant. Ah, here it is.
It's that big-ass building right in the middle of the town.
Wow, it's that giant one that I literally just moved right over earlier, and I just didn't even recognize it. This is the thermal power plant. You know, this thing definitely does look like it's like the whole roof has probably been opened up at this point from how many times it's been hit. It's been hit 90 days in a row. That's enough to go over the roof once and then twice. So I think they've probably given this thing a good old 1-2. In the middle of the city, mind you all, in the literal geographical center of Belgrade, which is actually kind of funny to think of. So everyone in the city knows when the power plant gets hit again. But moving on out of Belgrade, we also additionally saw that inside of Ukraine today, the losses for the Russian Federation were not that high. They were still pretty high, but comparative to the other days in the prior months, it wasn't exceptionally high. But they did lose one Bobcat. Hey!
Thank you, Ukraine. One Bobcat. Oh, we're very, very grateful for that.
So generous. And according to Misty's keeper of the records, 1,851 drones shot down is the new highest daily loss. The prior was 1,551 on the 11th of February of this year. 194 vehicles is the 10th highest loss, tied with January 21st to 2026. Artillery is higher, plus cruise missiles and special equipment. And over the past 24 hours, we were able to confirm that 740 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed, along with 6 APCs, 194 supply trucks, 3 main battle tanks, 40 artillery pieces, 1,851 drones, 26 cruise missiles, 1 anti-aircraft warfare system, and 1 Bobcat skid steer. Pretty good day overall. Not the highest that we've ever seen. It's not record. Well, actually, in drone losses, it is record-breaking, but in most other categories, it's average or low. But moving on from that and on to the front lines, it's time for us to get to Pokrovsk, as we were able to see that the Ukrainians were laying down that heat today on the Russians, particularly in the, 42nd Mechanized Brigade, and they were also laying down those beats.
The Russians like to speed down these roads. They like to break the speed limit. Oh, look, it's a man trying to do a stuntman trick right there. He's not Tom Cruise. He just got road rash. Oh, look. Road rash.
But I guess he didn't make it out. Oh, look, there goes another.
Oh, man. Road rash again, ¡2. Oh, look, these guys right here are a little scared of the road rash. Oh, damn.
Man, I think
now they
these
got
guys...
drone rash.
Bro, I think these guys up here were hearing the guys fall in the back, and they're like, oh, we lost one. How we lost another? Because look at this guy. Like, the passenger's like, what are they falling out for as the drone's coming in to get them? Ooh.
Oh, man. I'll tell you what. I'd rather get road rash than drone rash. Or rash. I wouldn't have either one of them.
That drone rash.
It's a terrible thing, Bliat. The drone rash comes in and causes your whole life to be screwed up.
Oh, and another bohanka.
Meanwhile, the other Russian said, I have a rash, but it's not from the road. Oh, we won't talk about this.
I have something that rhymes with rash, but sounds like crustacean. It's crabs. But it's like,
oh my God.
Man, a lot of Russians, they are afflicted with such a thing. When the crab SPG gets them from Poland, How was it? What are you thinking about? Is your mind in the gutter, good sir? I was talking about the crab SPG from Poland. You know that one, right? You know the one?
Man, everybody knows that's not what you're talking about. You're not fooling nobody. You're not slick.
No, the crabs. See? They got crabs. See?
They don't even have these, though. It's not even theirs.
Well, they're getting hit by the crabs, so they have crabs.
Man, I tell you, damn.
Oh, well, I was really meaning what I meant the first time. But anyways, moving on from that and on into our next clip in Pokrovsk, we also get to see the 68th Jaeger Brigade doing its work on the Russians as well today. This is near to the town of Udachny, which is in the southern flank of the Pokrovsk front. Is that an ATV with a trailer? Oh, well, it won't be
Sounds like those
anymore.
little trailers you can rent from Home Depot. You know, those little rinky-dink trailers that you can rent for like $9.99 or something like that. It's like they just let it got a little rental.
Oh, a Russian.
Oh, what's he doing?
He's checking out that corner for spiders and dust and stuff, you know? Keeping it clean. Tough day for him, Blit.
Tough day at the office. The printer stopped working.
Man, that truly is the roughest thing to happen in humanity. Oh, look, he's taking a run for it. Run, Russian, run. Come on, can you... Oh, he's not really running. It's like a horror movie run where he tries to run, but he never does. You know, he's just like tripping over his feet the whole way. We sat there and we covered today the news about the Russians getting, fighting in Pokrovsk, and the Ukrainians obliterated every one of them. Like, man, it's like one of those clips, you know, those memes they're going around on Instagram right now. That one guy who said the Iranians could blow away every aircraft. Oh, ridiculous, really. But anyways, we also got to see the Luftwaffe doing its work down in Zaporizhia. Is this 1943 or is this is this 1945 or is this 2025? It's hard to say, but anyways, let's get ready for the absolutely meme-worthy imagery of the Luftwaffe unit. Whew, man, that's rough.
Oh my god, they really got to back off like this. I don't know about that.
Man,
look at this though. They are doing some interesting work. I don't remember the German Air Force ever having drones in their arsenal. I think they had the Glock. But that wasn't ever proven. That was a Wunderwaffe. So I think they made it come true.
Man, everywhere else in Ukraine, Ukrainsky. Meanwhile, this one, you know, it's like, man, I can't even imitate the song. It's like, man, I think we just leave it up to y'all's imagination. But
also, by the way, Luftwaffe is just the German word for Air Force. By the way, that's all that is.
Well, that's true, but
that's all that is. That's just all that is. We're gonna leave it at that.
I mean, you know, like we've always said this throughout the whole war, and we're not going to stray away from it now. And the imagery of this unit could require some rebranding. You know, like it's not really on key, you know, with the rest of the army. But we did get to see them doing some pretty good work though down in Zaporizhia. Oh, look, it's a full bahanka. They call that a full house in Russia.
I'm not here to play cards. I don't care about full house. I have royal flush.
Well, we flashed them down the drain. Very nice.
Moving on from that clip. Moving on from that. Clip.
As just that script there at the very end of the video. That one, I don't know what kind of font that is, but it's like a very distinct font that you just cannot quite ignore the implications of a particular font like that from times past. It's like they literally couldn't have made this possibly worse.
It's that kind of font that makes you think it geschickt verleiben in den deutschen Wald. And it's like, maybe we want to, you know, skirt around that whole imagery there. I don't know. I find it kind of crazy, folks, that the Ukrainian army has not demanded that unit changes its emblems yet, because it's had those emblems the whole war, and we've been pointing out for a while now. We're like, you know, every other Ukrainian unit, they have emblems. They're generally about the Ukrainian state, their history, you know, some sort of a significant historical figure. Meanwhile, that one's down there basically retaking the Sudetenland with the imagery, and it's like, you know, maybe they ought to back off of that and get some new emblems for that unit, you know? Not really a marketable approach, you know? But anyways, moving on from that, I guess what we're trying to say, folks, is that those emblems are not the right approach to the whole symbology system of the Ukrainian army. You know what I mean? But anyways, moving on from that, it is time for us to get on up to Kyiv and get to the speech from none other than the president of Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky. Wait a minute, hang on. Before we get to this, there is one last thing that we have to do. Matthew just sent me a text on it, and I just saw it. We actually have to address this poll, because I did forget to mention, folks, out of the frontline clips today, that the Ukrainians today have announced that they have retaken 200 square kilometers of ground across the whole of the front after Russia banned WhatsApp and Telegram, which, crazily enough, folks, is the singular largest land gain that either side has seen in the war since the summer of 2023, which was the Ukrainian counteroffensive. This is the largest gain of ground that we've ever seen so far. And Matthew, what are people thinking about this gain and what it may mean for the Ukrainians, and what are you thinking about it as well?
Okay, so like the enforcer mentioned, this is the fastest frontline gains that we've seen since 2023. Also, by the way, this is literally the first major breakthrough that we have seen in ages by any side, the Russian side or the Ukrainian side, and Ukraine is the first one to make that work because the Russians are literally sitting there tapping their electronics that don't work anymore because they can't communicate, going, help me, bliat, and the Ukrainians just steamrolling the hell out of them. So it's really a disaster for the Russians. It truly is. And we haven't even really gotten the full extent of it yet, but they're saying that 200 plus square kilometers at least have been taken in recent offensive operations, which is a massive win. That is sincerely a big win. So what do you think about that? 37% said Ukraine will maintain the good gains, but it'll pretty much stop there, while 35% said Russian front lines will probably collapse very soon as a result of this, and 17% said Ukraine will likely lose momentum very, very soon. And I would generally be with the 37%. Ukraine will probably maintain the good gains they've gotten. They'll also probably move forward even more. But to say the Russian front lines are going to collapse, that would be a bit of a step too far, because the Ukrainians are doing a fantastic job. But you have to remember, though, the Russians have built very strong defensive fortifications behind the lines. Also, they have an endless pool of meat, basically, to pull from, the meat grinder strategy, to put them on the front lines. So that's a tough thing to go up against. So I'm not sure if Ukraine will collapse the front lines, but they're certainly doing a very good job. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that the Ukrainians are mostly going to maintain these good gains, but I'd also have to agree with Matthew. They're not going to be collapsing the Russian lines soon. It's going to put the Russians on the back foot, of course, but that doesn't mean that the Russians are about to lose all of the territorial gains that they've taken, considering that even still, we are largely in what we would call a pure-on-pure conflict, to where both sides are basically facing down themselves in a mirror form on the other side of the front. So it's really hard for them to make any significant gains where the front's going to completely collapse, but they are going to be able to capitalize on the current gains right now and possibly take a little bit more ground before the offensives are stopped and the Russians try and stabilize their lines again. So with that in mind, folks, it is now time for us to get back up to Kyiv and to cover the speech from the President Ukrainsky Volodymyr Zelensky. And so without further ado, here's the speech. Speech!
Шановні українці і українки, сьогодні є рішення нашої держави про санкції проти Олександра Лукашенка. Ми відповідаємо таким рішенням на, очевидно, більше втягування Білорусі у війну Росії проти України. Лукашенка звик торгувати суверенітетом своєї держави і здав багато інтересів Білорусі. Здав росіянам. Навіть повномасштабну війну Росія принесла в Україну, в тому числі з території Білорусі, і це факт. Але протягом довгого часу Лукашенко все ж таки утримувався від прямих своїх жорстких дій на користь Росії. Але від осені минулого року Україна фіксує на території Білорусі ретранслятори, які працюють на підтримку ударних дронів. Саме завдяки цим ретрансляторам Росія здійснювала удари по наших північних регіонах від Києва і Київської області до Волинської області. Це були удари по енергетиці, по нашій залізниці. Також, на жаль, Лукашенко продовжує підігравати Путіну в його небезпечній геополітичній грі з Орешником. Це загальноєвропейська загроза. Також Білорусі далі використовують як базу постачання компонентів, обладнання, техніки для російської армії. За сукупністю всього цього ми теж змінюємо політику і будемо відповідати адекватно загрозі. В Мінську повинні це розуміти. Є цей політичний сигнал із санкціями. Я доручив уважно вивчити також усі схеми Лукашенка і його спільників. Ми будемо протидіяти більш відчутно і будемо працювати з нашими партнерами в регіоні та всій Європі, також з глобальними партнерами, щоб вони повністю усвідомлювали, з чим мають справу, коли йдеться про режим в Білорусі. Білорусь, країну, людей, народ не можна втрачати для Європи, але цю особу, яка ставить Білорусь на службу Росії, точно варто втратити. Сьогодні детально ми говорили кілька разів з нашою командою на перемовинах в Женеві. Був другий день зустрічі і тристоронні формати, також інші формати. Україна зацікавлена в результаті. Станом на сьогодні не можемо сказати, що результат достатній. Військові поспілкувались з частини питань серйозно та змістовно. Чутливі політичні питання, питання про можливі компроміси та необхідну зустріч лідерів ще не опрацьовані достатньо. Розраховуємо на наступну зустріч, і було би правильно ще в лютому. Важливо, щоб були присутні європейці: Франція, Британія, Німеччина, Італія, Швейцарія, як приймаюча сторона. Саме ми в Україні завжди просуваємо позицію, що Європа повинна бути учасницею процесу. Я хочу подякувати Сполученим Штатам Америки, що цю позицію почули. Я також ставив завдання делегації обговорити гуманітарний трек, потрібні обміни військовополоненими, звільнення цивільних. Ми по кожній людині шукаємо інформацію та завжди працюємо на те, щоб повернути своїх, повернути українців додому. Кожен обмін має значення. Я вдячний також нашим воїнам на фронті, які проводять активні дії та поповнюють обмінний фонд для нас, для України. І саме сміливість наших воїнів все це забезпечує. І гуманітарні результати, і загалом нашу можливість дипломатії, наші сильні дипломатичні позиції. Важливо, коли це позиції спільні, коли ми всі в Україні працюємо на те, щоб Україна вистояла, захистила себе, досягла достойного миру. Будь-яка інша політика в Україні зараз абсолютно зайва. Це час війни, час захисту нашої держави, захисту нашого народу. Особисте на потім. Тому я хочу подякувати кожному, хто захищає Україну, саме українські інтереси, як себе самого на будь-якій посаді, на будь-якій роботі, на будь-яких позиціях. Дбайте про Україну, дбайте про людей. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
And with that, that is the end of the speech from the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, here on day 1456 of our news coverage, and day 1456 of the news out of the war in Ukraine and from around the world. And it's time for us to move on, folks, into our second segment of the stream, where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And boy, howdy, folks, what a time it is. What a time it truly is. We have 13,000 people here with us live right now. That's one hell of a number, fellas. That's one hell of a number. And I got to say that we're entirely honored and greatly appreciative to know that so many of y'all from around the world, here in the United States and abroad, continue to watch the Enforcer channel every single day to get your news coverage of what's going on in the world around you. We thank y'all greatly for spending y'all's time, of course, enjoying our news, and we hope that if y'all will subscribe. We'd love to see new subscribers join this channel. We've had about 1,000 actually roughly today join the channel, and we would be happy to see y'all be a part of that 1,000 new people who have joined this channel today. If you have enjoyed the show, then you're probably definitely going to be enjoying the question segment, because now the question segment is basically the wild, wonky world of anything and everything that comes up, except for religion, politics, climate change, and generally whether the A-10 is relevant in modern warfare or not. Those are the four things that we do not talk about, but we can talk about literally anything and everything else. And we always get into some really interesting rabbit holes and also some absolutely crazy segments that sometimes are absolutely killing us over and everyone else in laughter because of how goofy or silly the jokes or the topic is. So we are about to be getting into that right now, so make sure to stick around. A lot of people love this segment, and we bet y'all will too. So Matthew, please take us away. What do we got?
All right. And also, by the way, someone just said, is this really live? Like, is this actually live? He said, the bro just exposed himself. We're actually from the future, actually. In fact, we're 30 seconds in the future because there is a slight delay between us recording this and it actually getting put out live on YouTube. So I think it's roughly about, actually, 30 seconds might be a little bit too much. I think it might be more like 15 seconds or something like that. There's a slight delay. So technically, we are from the future, actually, just by a little bit, just by a little bit. It gives us a little edge out there on the other analysis. But anyways, jumping in to our Super Chat questions right off the bat, we're going to get those, then our live chat questions and our Morse code decoders. And first off, we have a $50 super chat, excuse me, from Hokey Redneck, who put in that 50. And we do appreciate that very much, Hokey, for that generous support. He said, who in chat likes frozen thin mints or the commercial variants?
You know, I've never had frozen thin mints. Matthew, have you had any?
I haven't had them frozen. I've had them room temp. They're pretty decent.
You know, I wonder what they would taste like if they were frozen. I bet they taste the same, but they'd just be cold. But beyond that, I do thank you massively for the support and help with this channel to keep them running. If you were talking about junior mints, I have had some junior mints, and I think they're pretty decent. I mean, they're not bad at all. And I got to say, that's generally my only opinion and take on it. Matthew, what do you think about them, the junior mints and all?
I mean, junior mints. I don't really eat junior mints. My only experience with those is watching them in Seinfeld, where Kramer accidentally dropped that junior mint into the surgery room. That's the only thing I remember about junior mints. I never really eat those, to be honest.
Yeah, I never really eat them either, but I mean, they're pretty decent. I've had them a couple of times, and they're not too bad. But a humongous thanks to you so much once again for support and help with this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that this addressed that incredibly well. And also, to add on to that whole comment about, is this live? Oh, hell yeah, it's live. I know that sometimes we sound like we're well rehearsed, at least in how we're able to belt out like a line of speech, but this is all done live. We don't even have a script. We literally wing this thing by the seam of our pants every single night. Imagine if we were able to have the time or a crew to be able to produce our script. Imagine how good it would all sound then, because then we wouldn't have to sit there sometimes like I do and stutter in the middle of a sentence to figure out what I'm about to say next, because I literally am working off of no script. I would have everything pre-arranged. I would just be reading off of a teleprompter like all of your favorite faces on mainstream television who don't know what the hell they're talking about. They just read off of a teleprompter.
What do you mean you're going to wing it? Like, has anyone ever thought what the hell that even means? I hear people saying that all the time. They're like, oh, I'm going to go out there and wing it because I didn't have time to prepare. It's like, yeah, wing it. So I had to pull it up, by the way, because this is the stuff I think about when my mind is idle. Wing it means, apparently it's a phrase stemming from 19th century theater, referring to actors studying their lines in the wings, meaning the sides of the stage, just before going on because they were covering for someone else. So if you're winging it, that means you're filling in for an actor in a play. That's what that means. So that's where the term wing it comes from. I never knew that.
That's interesting. I never knew that either. You know, there's a lot of outdated phrases like that, like burning the midnight oil. I mean, if you said that these days you were legitimately burning the midnight oil, the ghost of Dick Cheney would come and strangle you. I mean, like, you know, you couldn't get away with that kind of stuff these days, you know, like, but back then you could. Like, and it's kind of interesting, those old phrases and sayings that we still use, like blowing a top. Like, what does that even mean? Matthew, can you pull that one up? Like, what blowing a top means?
Yeah, I'll see what that means. Let's see here. Let's see
here. We're about to find out, everyone.
Holy moly. Okay. Let's see.
Not the
here.
Urban Dictionary definition. We're just
let's retype that. Let's retype that. What the hell? Careful typing that in, by the way. Let's see. It's blowing your top. It's an idiomatic expression meaning suddenly becoming extremely angry or lose your temper or fly into a rage. So it implies uncontrollable and loud. So I think it refers to like a tea kettle or something. Like if it gets too hot, like, you know, like somebody has a hot temper or something like that, the tea kettle is going to basically explode and blow the top off the kettle. I think that's what that means. But apparently this has a lot worse meanings to it, by the way. This has some very bad meanings.
You were supposed to pull up blowing a top. Like that wasn't what, like, I thought you knew the phrase to say, like, blow your top. Like I thought you just, like, knew that, and you're going to put that in instead of blowing a top. Like, I mean, like, that clearly wouldn't come up with good results. But beyond that, you know, it's like, it's kind of like those, you know, other sayings, you know, like the ones that I can't even think of now because I'm so taken away by the fact that you literally typed that in and got the Urban Dictionary definition instead. But oh man, you know, what's some other phrases, folks, that y'all are thinking of that you don't really know the actual meaning of? Like, we say it all the time, but we actually don't really know the true meaning of it because it's been lost to time. Think of some of them and put them in the chat, and we're gonna pull them up and see what we can get on them. Because
what's that one that the British people are always saying? Like whenever they get angry and stuff, they're yelling at each other. Like, you know what I'm talking about?
There's a lot of things they say when they yell at each other. You gotta be more specific, man. Like,
let's see. They're like, "What you doing, you wanker?"
Oh, oh, yo! Like that's not like a figure of speech. That's like a straight up like deal. Like that was fairly self-explanatory. Like I mean, you know, like I don't even think we need to Google search now. I think we can kind of get what that one means. But let's see here. How about let's see. Steam coming out of your ears. How about that one, Matthew? How about that one?
Steam coming out of your ears, that's a self-explanatory one. Steam coming out the ears, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Honestly, I think we'll just have to run across some more of these phrases and look them up as they come along.
Yeah. I guess we will. A pipe dream, perhaps. Well, we know where that one comes from. That comes from the oil industry. I actually don't know. But Matthew, pull that one up. Pull a pipe dream.
That has something to do with getting high.
Where does the saying pipe dream come
He
from?
thinks I'm joking.
I actually do think you are. Oh, it's from smoking that dope. Okay.
No, it's not that. It's not that. It's tobacco.
What I pulled up was opium, oh boy. It was narcotics. It's just straight up.
A little different pipe.
Man, they said it was from opium smoking in the 18th and 19th century in China. I gotta be honest with y'all. I didn't know that was what pipe dream meant. That's interesting to me. It's news. But anyways, with that, I suppose that we're on to the next one now. Enough of these phrases. We'll probably run into them as we talk tonight, and we'll just pull them up as we go. So, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our next super chat here, this one goes to Hokey Redneck yet again, and thank you very much, Hokey, for the second support of the night. This time he threw in a $100 support, and thank you very much, Hokey, for that massive support. He said, "Get the kids with old phrases."
Oh man, yeah, like that's we do use some old phrases from time to time, and also there are a lot of people who always use old phrases around here from time to time as well, and we don't know what they mean, and we have to pull them up. But I always find it interesting, hearing like old phrases, new phrases, phrases that are timeless, and then kind of knowing what they mean. Really interesting sort of an exercise at learning about the English language. Like there's a whole bunch of things, folks, that you would think are pretty straightforward, but they're not. Like, for example, Matthew, in English, the word excuse me means, like, excuse me, like, I need to get your attention really quickly, and I'm very sorry about having to distract you from something else. That's generally, like, the intention behind it. Do you know what the Italian word for excuse me is?
Get the hell out of the way.
No, it's scusi.
Say it again.
Scusi.
That's a fascinating one.
Like, excuse me, but it's just scusi. It's like they took the E off of the front. Like, and also the M off of me. It's like, that's interesting. And it's not an Anglicanized word either, scusi. It's an actual word that's been around for pretty much the entire time that the Italian language has existed since it evolved out of Latin. So a really interesting sort of a thing there with how languages work and how sayings work, and also how a lot of English words are generally borrowed from other languages, which is what a lot of people don't know. And that's also why the English language kind of doesn't make a lot of sense to people who are trying to learn it, because some of our words in English come from French, some of them come from Greek, some of them come from a Latin derivative, some of them even come from Germanic words, from High German, and also some of them even come from the Dutch. And all of those combined, including some Celtic words, although that's fairly rare, to create what English is today, which is very interesting to me how that all works, because every single word that we use in the English language, you can generally find that it has some sort of a derivative, or it originated from a word in another language, and then it just eventually evolved into being a part of the English language, like beef. Which is actually a derivative of a French word. Interesting stuff like that, really. But anyways, a huge thanks to you so much once again for that unbelievably amazing support, Hokey Redneck, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And also, Hokey Redneck said "catty wampus." That means crooked or sideways or something like that. That's a Southern term, I think. I really haven't heard anybody say that. I haven't even heard older folks say that in the South very much. I've only heard that, I think, in movies and TV shows. I've only heard that. So it's that's kind of an obscure phrase right there, kind of like obtuse.
But we've said that before. I remember I said, look, man, like you parked the car all cattywampus. Like we've said that before. We both said that to each other before many times.
Maybe sometime I might have like forgotten, possibly with a little amnesia.
And let's see. It's an informal American English term meaning askew, crooked, diagonal, or in disarray. But where did it originate from? Let's see. So apparently the first recorded instance of it was in 1834, primarily in the South. So this is a fairly Southern thing, apparently. Let's see here. Oh, wait a minute. Actually, it does have derivatives. Let's see. It's from the obsolete Greek word cater, which means downward or toward, and perhaps from the old Scottish slang wampish, to wriggle or twist about. So there actually is some origins in obsolete wordage for cattywampus, which is a really interesting word and one that I don't think many people have ever heard of out of the South. But a really interesting one, and I thank you for bringing that one up, Hokey Rennick. That's actually a really interesting one to know about the origins of. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Valor Kaus, who puts in a $20 support. And thank you very much, Valor, for that support. We do appreciate that. And he said, thank you guys for all that you do. Glory to Ukraine and glory to the LSA.
Hey, and thank you so much for the incredible support and enjoying what we do. You help to make it possible with your support, and very few people on this entire channel support the channel and help it to keep on running, which is how we generally have it designed. We want people to be able to watch news for free and have high quality news that they can access without having to pay something along the lines of a monthly subscription or basically having to go through an entire wall of ads to watch a show. And I gotta thank you incredibly for that support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be on air right now for you to be able to enjoy the show. So you're actually a big part of keeping us on air right now tonight. So humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one here is going to go to none other than Watchman. Excuse me, goodness.
Oh.
I knew that was coming. But Watchman puts in a 20, and thank you very much, Watchman, for that support. They said, did I hear once you're both from Utah? And if so, what's up with the weather, LOL? And love the channel. And we're not from Utah, but we do live here now. We've been living here for about 4 months at this point. Much better, in my opinion, I would say, in Utah. I like it here a lot. But originally from Alabama. Lived there and born and raised there in Alabama. So we're brand new here in Utah. Very nice place, by the way. And I have no idea what's up with the weather. It seems like some snow is hitting in late February. And basically, winter is hitting when spring should be like just around the corner, which is kind of weird. But Enforcer, what say you?
Oh, I'd say I don't know what's going on with the weather around here. We're not native to these lands. We're from the lands of Bama, Alabama in particular, with a banjo on our knee. But beyond that, we moved out here just a little while ago, and we have no clue what's going on with the weather. It's actually been significantly hotter in every part of the United States, generally west of the Rockies, this year, and it's been exceptionally colder east of the Rockies, which is really interesting because funnily enough, this year in Salt Lake City and generally in Utah, this is the lowest period of snowfall ever recorded in human history, ever since records began about the 1850s or so in this area, which is really interesting and also quite concerning, you know, to a degree. But I do have to say, it did snow today, and I was really happy about that. We got about maybe like 2 inches of snow, maybe, and it was really cool looking too, because it was like a gale out there still. It was like hurricane force winds, and the snow's like flying around in it. It really felt like we were up in like the depths of Alaska almost for like a couple of hours, and then it stopped.
My place was actually shaking last night. The wind was so bad. Like, the wind was so loud, it actually prevented me from going to sleep for like a solid hour. Like, I was sitting there just hearing, and all those like crashing into the side of the building. And then eventually I felt the building shaking. I was like, geez, that wind is actually shaking the building. Like, it was insane. And then today it snowed a little bit, but it didn't snow as much as they said it was going to snow. It's like barely, maybe an inch of snow on the ground, which is hardly anything.
Yeah, it really is. It's like crazy, like the wind was last night. It was howling around my place too. But I have to say, I think Matthew's place, because it's a little bit different than mine. It handled the wind a little bit worse, because mine, like, I heard the howling of the wind, and it was kind of like, it was actually shuddering stuff around outside, but it wasn't anything extremely bad around my place. But at Matthew's, it sounded like it was actually like the battlefield nearly, with how bad the winds were over there. So really interesting with that. I mean, it's crazy, folks. You never know about that. You never think about that until you come out here. But the winds in Wyoming and Utah, and I don't know about the rest of the West because we haven't really been around that much out here, but the winds in Utah and Wyoming are absolutely severe. Like, severe enough that they can actually blow over freight trains, believe it or not. Found that out. They do that sometimes in Wyoming. And I was like, dang, that is crazy.
Yeah, you know, I actually walked outside after the stream was over last night because I was like, I got to go outside and see what the hell this wind is about, because it's literally like about to bust my windows like into the place. So I literally walked outside, and I went outside to go see what the wind was like. I was literally like holding on to the railing like outside, and like you know how in like cartoons, like when the wind's really blowing, they'll like be holding onto the railing, they'll be literally sideways off the ground, like just holding
Yeah.
onto the railing. I felt like that, like it was strong enough where it felt like it could knock you over, like if you didn't have something to grab onto. It was that strong. It was powerful.
You know what's crazy, folks, is that the winds are even stronger out in Wyoming. And this is something that's actually crazy, folks. There's a mountain pass about right through here, in between these mountains here and the Wiental Wasatch Cache National Forest area here. And this little area creates what is described by apparently the National Forest Service or something along those lines, basically a wind tunnel. And the winds are so strong through this whole area that if I drop y'all down on the interstate out here, it's highly likely you won't see a single tree for hundreds of miles because the winds are so strong they blast away anything living that's taller than, say, a few inches. So there's nothing out here that grows like trees and such for that reason. It's not because it's arid, it's just because the wind would blow away the trees and literally strip them of their bark if they tried to grow out here. Which is insane to think that the winds are that strong. And we didn't even have to think it, we knew it, because when we were moving, I was driving the Penske van, and the Penske van almost got blown over on this very interstate by those winds. No joke. Matthew watched it. The left side axle under me on the driver's side lifted up off of the ground from the wind for a couple of seconds, and then it got planted back down on the ground. And I got to tell y'all, folks, that was terrifying. I felt like I was in a ship on high seas with it like rocking over a wave and stuff in there from how the wind was pushing it around. It was scary. But we made it through. But really crazy stuff with the winds out here. That's one whole thing in itself. But the snow, though, I don't know what's up with that whole deal out here in the West in particular. I wish it would snow a lot more because we came out here and we were heavily expecting snow. We were expecting winter driving and, the winter tires and all that stuff. And then none of that happened, basically. And I don't even think it's going to happen now with the snow that fell today. But a humongous
Man,
thing.
I was getting used to it as well because I was getting back to riding my bike again because it was finally like 55, 60 degrees every day. So I was like, oh, it's good to actually go like for a bike ride or go running or something. So I was getting back into the habit of it. And now it snowed. So my last day riding the bike was like 2 days ago. Also, by the way, when I was riding my bike around the other day, I don't know what this was about, but a black SUV drove by while I was like doing my bike ride. And I guess I posted pictures of the bike on Patreon. So if someone's really keen, they can probably, maybe if they're connecting the dots, know it was me. But this black SUV went by the complete opposite direction as I was riding next to the road. It starts honking and waving and stuff, like going berserk. And I was like, what the hell? I was like, I'm like, who is this? I'm like, am I about to get capped or am I about to like, is it about to meet a fan? I'm like, I'm not sure what's going on here. And also, what's up with it? It's a black SUV too. I'm like, I'm not sure what's up with this. It must be my surveillance or something like that going by. But they were going berserk. I'm not sure if it was maybe a case of misidentification or what. Like maybe they thought it was somebody else. But I'm like, that was weird. I just kept going, and that was the end of it. But I was like, that's strange. That was my last bike ride, by the way. Was that whole thing, and then the snow hit.
Man, I gotta say, it's crazy. On the other day, folks, we went to a trail. Let's see here. It was the Bear Canyon one. Where is that at? Where's that at? Where it is. So we went up this trail, right here. And when we were going up it, folks, the wind started blowing, and it was so strong that when we were trying to walk down these little, let's see, what are they called, Matthew? It's, like this design of trail, the zigzag trail, the switchback trail.
Yeah,
the switchbacks. When we were walking south on it each time, the wind was blowing so hard against us, you had to like fight to even keep up a slow walking pace. And it's just crazy the winds out here, really. I mean, it's a phenomenon that you'd have to come out here and witness to really understand the power of just the winds themselves, instead of what in the south would have to be a tornado for you to get that kind of wind, and you basically have to be in the tornado to even experience something close to it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Also, by the way, that's good hiking territory right there that you're looking at. That's some good spots right there. I tell you, you can look out over the whole city from that little shelf right there, off of the side of Draper. That's a nice spot.
Yeah, it is a really nice spot. And it's also, apparently, this is according to folks online, these sorts of trails here are pretty steep, which I didn't know, and Matthew doesn't think that they're steep, but this trail right here gains about, I think it's like 400 something feet of elevation in about a mile. Which I'll be honest with y'all, like when I think about that, it's like that doesn't really sound like a whole lot. But when we pulled it up, like everyone online is like, oh, those are very challenging trails, and it's like, huh, that's interesting. Like, honestly, I feel it. Matthew doesn't like I feel it when we go up the trail. I'm like, damn, I'm getting my ass beat by this trail, and Matthew be like, oh no, I don't feel anything. I'm fine. And I'll be like, well, how? Like, it's like this
That's
feels.
because I'm training every day. Like I'm always running, biking, or something. I'm usually usually when I go for bike rides, they're usually about 10 miles. Usually runs are about 2 to 3 miles for me. So I've been doing that ever since I moved out here to Utah. So I've gotten 3 or 4 months of pretty good physical training under my belt at this point. So now when I first got out here trying to go up a trail like this, I probably would have been struggling. But now it's like nothing. I can go up this thing pretty fast without stopping, and I'd be winded pretty much.
So interesting enough, folks, by the way, here's another interesting fact about this trail. This trail, from what I was reading, with the elevation that it has over a mile, it's something like 10% grade or greater. I think it's like 11 or something like that, which is pretty steep. And it doesn't honestly feel like that when you're on it. But when you get up towards the top, like up here, and you look down, like the car in the parking lot looks like a little speck at that point, 400 feet up. But what's even crazier to think, Matthew, is that only up at 400 feet, that's half the height of the Eiffel Tower that we go up on this trail. We would have to go up another trail, same length, same height, to get to the height of the Eiffel Tower, which would be about right here on the mountain.
Yeah, I want to go up the whole thing. Like, I really want to go to the top of it. Like, right now it's a little bit too wet. I think the snow, like, packs are still melting and stuff off the mountain. So we tried to go up there before, but we didn't have micro spikes on the shoes, so it ended up being slip and fall school all the way back down. But I'll let you get up there to the top of the thing. That seems like it's an overnight thing. Like, yeah, it seems like you got to backpack that, unless you're really like hauling ass up and down it, which seems like it could be dangerous. You gotta camp out somewhere.
Yeah, if I was to camp out somewhere, I would pick somewhere like right here at the bottom of this cliff, because it seems like it'd be protected from the winds, like mostly. I think I might be wrong, but
Yeah, you'd have to have a pretty good tent for that. Like, you'd have to have one of those tents that can withstand some pretty powerful wind, like one of those like mountaineering type tents for that. I don't think a normal like Coleman or something like from Walmart's gonna cut it.
yeah, bro, you're gonna get blown off the mountain on one of those, bro. Like, go fall into your death off of the thing. And like, honestly, I would say that this probably isn't a good thing to go hike, because I've read online that this is a fairly challenging hike. It's one of the most challenging ones in the Wasatch, and also trying to reach the peak is extremely dangerous, because this is basically a 1 or 2 foot wide cliff's edge on both ends, and if a high wind comes through, you just could get blown off of it and fall to your death because it's hundreds of feet down.
Yeah, I don't think it would be that bad. Like, not falling down the hundreds of feet, that would be bad. But I don't think it'd be that bad. Like, climbing up the thing. I feel like as long as you're careful, as long as you're not like like distracted, like trying to yap or something like that with other folks as you're going up there. As long as you're focused, and as long as you're like got good footing, and you're generally in good shape, or your legs aren't like shaking like Jello trying to go up it or something, you should be fine. But if you have to get to a part where you actually have to like use like actual climbing gear or something, that could get sketchy.
Honestly, man, like, I feel like y'all folks, Matthew is a beast. He's built different. Like, I'm like, you can fall hundreds of feet to your death. He's like, I'm built different. He falls off of it, he bounces. Like, it's a whole thing.
I don't think I would bounce. I don't think I would bounce. I think I would probably just fall apart.
It's like, oh, he hit the bottom. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on and into the next one.
And our next one goes to none other than Azra Harrison, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Azra, for that support.
Hey!
They said the Russian and Chinese equipment is not good enough to stop our stealth AC. And I don't foresee this operation being an issue for our forces, hopefully. An amazing show, and thanks.
And a big thanks to you for the support, and I really don't see it being that much of an issue either. People always talk about, oh, but the radars! It's like, come on. It's like, we've seen the Russian and Chinese radars at work for 4 years now. Literally the whole time we've been covering news on the show, we've been seeing them at work, and they suck. I mean, it's terrible. They basically pose no threat to the U.S. Air Forces, and we also have abilities to deal with radar systems in the form of our suppression of enemy air defense doctrines, and also our AG-88 harms. So I would definitely agree with you. They don't pose a threat to any military operation that's coming up. The only thing that concerns me, though, is that they could mine the strait, but we could easily deal with that by just obliterating their navy before they can try that. So as long as we do that, we're fine in every way. This will go swimmingly. If we don't do that, then the military operation will go by swimmingly, but the mining of the strait will cause economic damage, and it might be significant even. So I hope that has addressed that incredibly well, and a big thanks to you once again for support and helping the channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, someone in the live chat, Damien, said, have you seen the Piers Morgan interview with Zelensky that he did today? I didn't see the actual whole interview itself. I just can't stomach an interview that long. Like, it's just simply too long of an interview. But I watched clips of it, the most important segments that Zelensky stated. The main thing out of that interview that I found interesting is Zelensky appears to be sort of letting go of the whole diplomatic statements toward the United States. It seems like Zelensky's letting more of his frustration show with the U.S. administration, which honestly, I'm surprised he's held out for this long, because the U.S. keeps telling Zelensky that he needs to come to the table quick or else. Meanwhile, Putin's the one actually causing the problem. So Zelensky said he's tired of that. He actually just admitted he's tired of it, and he's basically showing that he can't take much more of the stupidity. He's getting tired of it. He's at the end of his rope. So that's the main thing I got out of it, is he's pretty much getting tired of it. And the U.S. doesn't really have much leverage over Zelensky anymore. So he can say that, and there's not too many consequences as a result of it, except for maybe some hurt feelings and maybe some, bad Truth Social statements or something. You never can tell.
This stupid little man, this little midget.
But beyond that, though, I would say, honestly, I'm pretty shocked it took him this long to say that, as far as Zelensky, because he's had the patience of a saint to deal with it for a year and 2 months. Because I honestly thought that he was just going to get tired of it pretty quickly way back last year, and he didn't, which was pretty crazy to me. I was like, damn, he's like got some patience here. And now he's finally showing that he's running out of patience, which, I mean, hell, if y'all were in that position, folks, and you had done nothing but give concessions to the Russians because the U.S. kept beating you over the head, and the Russians still aren't budging, they literally haven't budged at all, and then the President of the United States keeps getting on your ass about making more concessions. I mean, wouldn't y'all get tired of that? That's an extremely, raw, unfair way of handling the situation. Like, I don't even think anyone can even argue that unless you're just absolutely biased towards the President. You act like he can never be wrong. That's an absolutely raw way of treating someone. It's kind of like how in another situation, for example, say you sit there and you get in an argument with someone, and someone else out there says, oh, well, you clearly were, everyone that you talk to is like, you're clearly in the right. But anyone who has leverage over you keeps threatening you. You need to apologize to that person, even if you were right, or else. Imagine how unfair that would be. That would be extremely unfair. And I don't even think.
And also, it's like it's putting Zelensky in a spot where it's like Zelensky, granted, Ukraine has been the underdog the whole time. I think that's been sort of recognized, that Ukraine was always seen as the underdog in the fight between Russia and Ukraine. It turns out that was a severe underestimation of what Ukraine was capable of, and Russia has been proven to be a huge paper tiger or paper bear, whatever you want to call them. But largely speaking, I would say, generally speaking, that Ukraine has done a fantastic job. Like, they really have done a fantastic job, and forcing Zelensky to keep bending the knee to Putin, who's the one who illegally invaded his territory, is kind of playing into the idea that might makes right, which is what the U.S. foreign policy seems to sort of lean into these days. Whoever has the most strength and the most power to screw somebody over, that's who gets the most leniency, which is a terrible way to operate. But that's generally why they're giving Putin so much credence, is because of that mindset, and they still view Zelensky as the underdog, even though generally he's winning the war.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy to me, and it's like, if we had that might makes right mindset historically forever, that means that if we looked back at the U.S. 250 years ago, we would have said that the British should have curb stomped the United States, and the French and the Spanish shouldn't have come to our rescue, because clearly the British were stronger than the colonials, and so they ought to get curb stomped. That would be the same kind of mindset. And I find it a little bit ridiculous, folks, especially when we look at America from a historical perspective. America didn't win the Revolutionary War that founded this nation single-handedly with no help. We had to have a humongous amount of French and Spanish help to be able to win the Revolutionary War. And we even had to have some help of some Germanic states from the Holy Roman Empire to be able to win the war as well, like von Steuben and Lafayette. and also the French Navy that defeated the British Navy that tried to relieve Cornwallis at the Siege of Yorktown in 1783. If the French and the Spanish and some Germans were not there for America way back in 1776 to 1783, or 1775 to 1783, America would not be here today. And I feel like that is an absolutely ridiculous sort of a premise to take in foreign policy, considering that our country and its entire existence is basically owed to an endless helping of foreign support when we fought our war. We now take the premise today that other people are basically up shit creek without a paddle if a larger country comes knocking at their door and threatens their independence, sovereignty, and freedoms. A lot like the British were threatening our independence, sovereignty, and freedoms when we rebelled against them in 1775. That's like, I don't really see how that can even historically align with America's history and how we were brought into being, and much less how we've done everything since then. Like World War I, World War II, the times after the Second World War, what everything looked like as far as the end of the Revolutionary War. I mean, hell, we've basically gone through most of history, if you watch it and you really pay attention to it, with the U.S. under the understanding that we owe Europe a great deal, pretty much an eternal debt, for our own liberty and freedom. And a lot of people go, oh, well, that's not true. Well, I would say it's probably true, because if it wasn't for the French, primarily, America would not be here today. Our entire existence every year is generally thanks to the French's unending support that they gave to us during the Revolutionary War. If it wasn't for that, we wouldn't be here right now as an individual country. We would basically be an extension of Canada for the large part. We'd probably be one larger dominion or an independent subject at this point that would have a parliamentary government with no constitution, with no Bill of Rights, with no due process like we have it under the American constitutional system. It would be a completely different form of an existence. The country would look completely different. We wouldn't be the America we are today, and we wouldn't have all of the amazing historical figures and the inventions and creations that we have that was brought about by our American system. It wouldn't have happened. And that's why I think that this sort of foreign policy is really messed up, because if anything, we owe a lot to Europe for our existence, and they owe a lot to us for the amount of times that we've come to help them due to the eternal debt that we owe them for our independence. It's a very mutual sort of a system. And I would say that I think that's one that should continue well on into the future, and I think that after this administration ends, whoever comes into charge of the executive branch particularly should make sure to mend our relations with the Europeans and see that we continue to have an incredibly strong economic and military alliance with them, because wasting that and throwing that to the wayside would be a enormous miss on our end, and we would pay for that dearly for decades and centuries to come even. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. And also, Peter Schnell said Canada has a constitution and Bill of Rights. Do they? Because I thought that they operated a lot like the English rules, kind of like a loose constitution of like key legal writings, but it wasn't a actual bound and codified constitution like ours that was strictly written as the defining article of the government. Matthew, can you pull that up really quickly and see what it is?
And what am I pulling up?
Does Canada have an actual solidified constitution like America has?
Yes, it has the Constitution that serves as the supreme law.
Like an actual. Let me go pull this up. I've never heard of this before. I thought it operated a lot like the English Constitution. The Canadian Constitution. Let's see. Canada's Constitution is the supreme law established through a mix of codified acts, primarily the Constitution. Oh. So it kind of is like the English Constitution in a way where it's like a mix of stuff that was key to Canada's government, and then they just binded it together in an act and said, this is basically the Constitution. In England, they actually don't even have, well, in the United Kingdom, they don't even have that. In the United Kingdom, the English Constitution is basically just the important legal writings, and I don't really think they've even had a parliamentary act to define what specific ones they are. It's just that they're basically understood, and that's what they work off of. And that's actually kind of interesting, folks, because unlike America, in Britain, there is no such thing as a freedom of speech, a freedom of firearms, a freedom from unreasonable searches and seizures, a right to trial by jury. All of that can generally be decided by the parliament, and that's why they actually call it a democratic dictatorship. dictatorship as far as the British government is concerned is because there isn't really a lot of checks and balances and also a lot of protections for individual liberties and freedoms because it's never been codified in a specific constitution or a Bill of Rights in the United Kingdom. And that's why you'll see in Britain, things can change largely on a dime. Like, for example, if the Labour Party comes into power, the entire economic system in Britain can start leaning heavily into a socialist economic framework. But if the Conservative Party comes into power, then it can be privatized to hell to the point that it's destructive in a different equal measure. And it's really interesting with that. And you can even see that as well in a whole bunch of other things, like the British right to firearm ownership ceased to exist after the 90s. There was a shooting incident that happened in Britain in the 90s that shocked the country, and the parliament just immediately almost wrote out everyone's right to own firearms over there. And you can also see that there's a huge ongoing debate in the United Kingdom right now about freedom of speech, because considering that there's no codified protections to freedom of speech and expression, and any Supreme Court rulings like there are in the United States that generally defines what freedom of speech is and what it isn't, in Britain they can just write things away and say this is no longer allowable speech because there is no protection of it. Which, once again, this is why I would say that the U.S. constitutional system and federal republic system is probably one of the best that we've seen in the world because it protects individual liberties, no matter what kind of a mob tyranny is elected into the government. There's a lot of checks and balances there to be able to protect people's liberties, no matter who's in charge and what they think. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to Chris Feilbach. And thank you very much, Chris, for, I believe, that is actually the first support of the night. And we appreciate that very much. He put in a 20 and said, if Iran, China, and Russia are so powerful, why do they all wear Western-looking military attire?
Well, the reason why is because they hate us because they ain't us. That's literally the only way I can describe it. They hate us a whole bunch, but they also know that we truly are the superior fighting force on the planet, so they imitate us. And that's really the best way that I can explain it. It's like literally the best way I can get it. It's kind of like how Russians talk about how much they hate America, but they'll wear like a NASA sweater or something like that. It's like, how the hell do you hate us, but you also like NASA? It's like, that makes no sense. That's an institution of the U.S. government. But anyways, a big thanks to you for the support. I hope that does address that well. Kind of a clear and simple answer, but that's about as in-depth as I can really get on that. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Arar983, who puts in a 20 as well. And thank you very much, Arar, for that support. He said, breaking news. Conga line of air shipments of Costco chickens spotted over SLC and LSA.
And I thank you humongously for the support for the Costco Chicken Fund. And I gotta say that it's an absolutely profound and amazing thing to know that folks like you are helping this channel to keep on running and helping us to get a delicious Costco chickens, I says. And I gotta thank you incredibly once again for that, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, we wouldn't be able to keep it running, and we wouldn't be able to keep this thing around so we could keep eating those Costco chickens and cover this news every day. So humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And I also saw someone say, the UK does have a Bill of Rights. Do they? I'm learning a lot tonight. UK Bill of Rights. Oh. This is actually quite old. From 1689. Let me see what it says. Let's see. The act asserted ancient rights and liberties by declaring that the pretended power of suspending the law and dispensing with laws by regal authority without the consent of Parliament is illegal. The commission for ecclesiastical causes is illegal. Levying taxes without a grant of Parliament is illegal. It is the right of the subjects to petition the king, and prosecutions for such petitioning are illegal. Keep a standing army in time of peace, unless it be with consent of Parliament, is against the law. Protestants may have arms for their defense suitable to... So that's interesting. So in the, if we're looking at Wikipedia here to take that as a source, if we're looking at the English Bill of Rights from 1689, right here, it actually does have a specific statement: the freedom of speech and debates or proceedings in Parliament ought not be impeached or questioned in any place, court or place out of Parliament. But if you notice here, something that's a little bit interesting with this, I haven't read the whole thing yet, is that it doesn't particularly say that individual citizens have that right. It just says that proceedings and debates in Parliament have a freedom of speech, but it doesn't extend that to the general public. That's interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah, so let's see here. Let me read on here really quickly. Let me glance over this. Listed 12. Let's see. prosecuting 7 bishops, levying taxes. Yeah, so interestingly enough, while the Bill of Rights, technically a Bill of Rights does exist in the UK, generally this doesn't really protect anyone's individual rights. It just protects the Parliament's rights from the monarchy. So, oddly enough, it actually doesn't assure y'all any freedom of speech in the UK. It just guarantees that there is some sort of a modicum of freedom of speech in the Parliament, and they can basically say anything in there, but it doesn't allow the public to have an endless check of freedom of speech like we have in the United States. So that is actually, I gotta say, folks, that is actually pretty messed up. So it literally, that literally is a rules for thee, not for me rule for the Parliament, is that they can say whatever they want, but if the public says something, then they could actually be prosecuted for whatever they say, because they can generally bend speech to be acceptable to any measure in one form or another, and then outlaw other forms of speech. That's actually quite interesting there. But anyways, moving on from that interesting discovery, we did find out that they do have a Bill of Rights, but then we found out that it's not a Bill of Rights for the people, it's a Bill of Rights for the Parliament. So that's actually a little bit interesting right there. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Waba Urial, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Waba, for that support as well. He said, warmongers and Costco chickens.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support. And I gotta say that, and now if my name isn't WR Monger, then we got a problem. But a big thanks to you so much for the support. And over the channel to keep it running. We love a Costco chicken, and we don't monger for war. Some people say that to detract from the show, because we've said clearly, and, you know, everyone never wants to give fair credit because some people are very obtuse and two-dimensional. But we said that a war with Venezuela and a war against Cuba really doesn't make any sense in America's strategic imperatives currently, and that could be dealt with later. But Iran is a necessary one. And I find it a little bit crazy, like people like Tucker Carlson and stuff, they'll always make it out to be like, why do we need any wars? It's like, well, you know, sometimes you don't really get to choose. You kind of have to go into them because they're necessary. You know, it's like, I think they kind of miss that nuance. And that's kind of what tells me that some of these people aren't as smart as people make them out to be, like Tucker and all. Because they go into this two-dimensional mindset where you either have to fight everyone and go to war with everyone on the planet, or you cannot have a war with anyone. And in my mind, it works more so on a bit of a scale. Sometimes you have to go to war with people, other times you don't. And really what we're looking for, we're not looking for people to say we want nothing but war and nothing but peace. We really want someone to say we will do what is necessary. So if peace is the best result and the best path, we will go for peace. And if war is our only option that's left, we will go to war, but we'll make sure that it's a just and right war. That's why I think that people are really more so missing out on the nuance these days. But I do thank you tremendously for the support, and I'm with this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one is going to go to Chris Feilbach. Once again, he puts in another 20, and thank you very much, Chris, as well, for that second support. He said the Harry Ball theorem might be one of the most misunderstood wording known to man. Wikipedia has a physical exemplification section if you need assistance visualizing, and I promise it's a real math theorem. And also it is, by the way. I actually pulled it up and looked, and it's actually a real math situation, actually.
Interesting. That's actually really interesting to know. I gotta thank you so much for the support and sharing that interesting tidbit of information with us, because I didn't know about that until right now. That's news to me. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we are going to be moving on into the next one. But also, I just saw someone say free speech in America could get you sued or canceled. No, only in particular circumstances. And those circumstances would be slander and libel. Or defamation in general. But generally, speech is allowed. Like, if you say something like, politicians are extremely crooked and I wouldn't really trust a single one of them, you can't get sued for that. But if you say, Jimmy Donaldson, like, let's just say that that's some random politician out there, is an absolute crook, that could get you sued. Like, or if you say something like, this guy has done this, because under U.S. law, you can generally say anything, but if you make a specific statement against someone personally in an attempt to harm their reputation off of a statement that is blatantly false, that is not protected speech. Because you're going out of your way to try and use freedom of speech to lie on someone and completely destroy their credit and reputation with the public and ruin their lives for no real discernible reason or purpose, meaning that you're causing damage to someone else, and that's where really the rights end, where it's no longer freedom of speech is another issue. And we've had to deal with that personally. There was this nut from years ago called the Hot Dog Man who would just go out of his way to literally lie about our channel in every single way to just try and destroy our reputation and have our channel buried on stuff that wasn't even true. And as far as those sorts of laws are concerned, I'd have to be honest with y'all. People do abuse them, because there is a way to abuse them. You can just basically sue anyone who says anything about you, and then the burden is on them to prove that their statements are true, and you have to pay for court costs and attorneys and such in the meantime. But on the flip side, however, they do protect people from absolutely malicious actors like the Hot Dog Man that go around and just literally lie on anyone and everyone to try and destroy their reputation for no reason at all. So there is a reason that those sorts of laws exist. I can guarantee you. Because imagine, like, for example, speaking of you, imagine if, like, we said, like, imagine with this platform, we just started saying stuff about you, like, you like, eat people or something, like, and we just started going out of our way to destroy your reputation. Those laws are there to protect folks like you from having your reputation destroyed from baseless lies like that that could be made. And I would say in that extent, those laws definitely do have a purpose. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Philip Harrison, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Philip, for that $20 support. He said, I'm enjoying the show as always, especially Zelensky's speech, which no one else covers. And it gives him a more rounded personality instead of the bad-mouthing that he got from particular folks out there. And LLT, LSA.
And thank you for the support. And I like to show the speech from Zelensky because it gives people a glimpse of what the guy actually is, how he talks, how he behaves, and what he's saying and thinking about and working on. And it really is something that I would say is pretty important. And I got to say a huge thanks to you so much for enjoying that. We have always shown the speeches from Zelensky, I think, from the very first days of the channel, and that's kind of crazy because we've basically shown like 1,450 at least of this guy's speeches nightly, basically. But a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Garcia, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Garcia, for that $20 support. We do appreciate that. He said, do you believe strikes by the U.S. and or Israel will be likely this weekend based off the large aircraft movements from the last couple of days?
Can you reread that one again?
Yeah, he said, do you believe the strikes by the U.S. and or Israel will likely be this weekend based off the large aircraft movements of the last couple of days?
I would say that the chance for strikes definitely is going to be sometime around this weekend and past that point. So I would say yes in a way, but I would say that it's not a guarantee that it's going to happen this weekend. I'd also have to hedge that statement with that in mind. But a humongous thanks to you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Maurice, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Maurice, as well. He said, how well mapped do you think the AOR in Iran at this time with the U-2 flights and drones?
The battlefields that we'll be seeing in Iran are very well mapped out at this point. We have satellite photography that helps out with that immensely. And we generally know what type of targets we would want to hit, where their air defense forces are, all that sort of stuff. We generally know that right now. So it's very well mapped out. And I'm sure the war plans will probably be executed perfectly once they're put into place. Because the operation to capture Maduro was done flawlessly. So if they were able to conduct an operation like that, which is basically unheard of in modern history, then I would say that a military operation, especially a prolonged air campaign against Iran, is probably going to be wildly successful in dealing with its conventional targets that it's aiming to hit and destroy. So a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a $10 support from Big Ron. And thank you very much, Big Ron, as well. He said, China harassing Filipino fishermen, LOL.
Yeah, they do that a lot. Back in the day, funny story, it wasn't too long ago, it was like a month ago, some Chinese ships were attempting to harass some Filipino fishermen, and they rammed right into each other, and one of the China Coast Guard ships had their bow destroyed, which was great. I mean, that was incredible. I love to see it. But hey, thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running, and I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 10 from Big Ron yet again, who said, what? They are grilling Brontosaurus burgers, LOL.
Brontosaurus? They're grilling a Brontosaurus burger? Oh, that's interesting.
Man, they're grilling up Dino.
They're grilling up, not Dino. Oh, Dino. Isn't Dino like a mobster or something like that from New York?
No, that's a dinosaur from the Flintstones.
I feel like that's a mobster thing. Let's see. Dino. Oh. Let's see here. Let me type this in. Dino Mobster. Oh my god, dude, there was a Colombo family soldier that was nicknamed Dino.
That's crazy, man. What was he, like the dinosaur?
I I don't know, but he was sentenced to 50 years in prison. So whatever he was doing, it was definitely just animal, I guess you could call. I don't know. I'm not a robot. What do you say? Oh, dang. He murdered New York City police. Damn.
Damn, he's a bad one.
Jeez. That's pretty rough right there. The guy's in prison for 50 years, so that happened in 2014. I don't think he's going to be, around anytime soon in the public, but that's pretty crazy right there. It really is a mobster named Dino. I thought I remembered that, but still, a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 10 from ADA. And thank you very much, ADA, for that $10 support. They said the carrier doesn't sit still. It has to be moving to land aircraft safely, and targeting it is going to be a pain for them.
That is true, and that's why it would be hard to target it with a hypersonic. Now, you see, there are some people out there who have been running this story that Iran will easily destroy all of America's carriers. But the thing is one guy who has been getting flamed for that, I mean, flamed like charbroiled briquette, is that he took that from someone else. And that someone else generally works for a company called Russia Today. And they generally put out stories that basically make it sound like America's terrible in every way. The F-35 sucks, the Russians would curb stomp us, they're going to destroy all of our carriers, China is completely wiping the United States, and none of it's true. If you listen to anyone who's paid by a foreign agency to talk about the United States and they're an American, you can basically guarantee, at least from what I would know in my personal experience, that they aren't really speaking from a position of actual knowledge and analysis. They're more so speaking on a point of propaganda, and you might as well completely discredit most everything they say. And that's why, folks, here on this channel, you'll hear me say something that's a lot more balanced. I'll be like, well, curb stomp the Iranians militarily, but they could mine the strait and that could cause us economic damage. That is a very realistic outlook, because it's not propaganda, because we're not saying the United States is completely untouchable and the Iranians don't have a way to hurt us at all, but we're also not saying on the flip side that Iran is entirely powerful and will completely destroy the United States of America, which would also be absolute propaganda. We actually take the true analysis of the situation, which is the United States will curb stomp Iran, but they can cause us economic damage as a last resort, which is the true scenario that we're seeing right now. So a humongous thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat is going to go to none other than Kyle Padell, who put in a 10. And thank you very much, Kyle, for that support as well. He said, look up Black Mesa State Park in Oklahoma. It's a good place for stargazing.
Let's see, where is this in Oklahoma? This is up there in that little handle up there, north of Texas. Let's take a look at this here. Where's that stargazing, huh? Oh, look at that.
Man, I want to go see that, like actually at night with no light pollution. Like, I want to see that. I've been trying to get to some place to see that before, but it didn't work out. The last time I tried to do it was too cloudy, but I would like to see that.
You know, folks, Matthew actually told me, hey, let's go look at the stars. And I was like, yeah, let's go look at it. And then I walked outside and I was like, dude, it's cloudy out here. Like, it was nighttime already. I was like, dude, it's cloudy out here. He was like, oh, no, I don't want to give it a chance. And then the wind started like really strong. And I said, hold up, let me look at my phone here really quick. I looked at it, and there was a blizzard coming in. I was like, Matthew, we're going to be driving out in the middle of the desert on almost dirt roads in the middle of a rainstorm or a blizzard. Like, we're going to die. And he was like, well, when you say it like that, we might as well go back home. And I was like, yeah, we should. And so that was the last time we tried it, sadly. But I do want to see something like this myself. It would be really cool to see. And, I mean, that is really crazy right there. That's what people used to see back in the day, folks. And, when you look at that, Matthew, I don't even know how in the world they came up with the constellations. Like, say, the Greeks, for example, how they came up with the constellations and the stars, how they would align to create certain objects and stuff. Because it's like, when you look at that, it just looks like a jumble, It doesn't really look like anything uniform.
Yeah, I have no idea how they came up with that, to be honest. It's something that's a bit of a mystery, I guess you could say, kind of like the pyramids.
Ancient aliens showing signs of other life. But anyways, a huge thanks to you for the support. And maybe one day we'll be able to go and see the clear night sky. That would be really cool. And a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one is going to go to Double Tap Outdoors. You put in a 7. And they said she needs to be, let's see here, wait a minute. Let's see here. They're saying Iran needs to be careful in the strait. It would be a massive win for Iran. Just a thought.
Oh, well, you got to be careful. You do have to be careful. Hopefully we'll play our cards right and handle everything just right, so that way the Iranians can't pull a fast one on us down there in the strait. But a huge thanks to you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Also, a big shout out to Plazath, who put in a 7. Man, thank you very much, Plazath, for that support. They said for the Snow Coffee Fund, and question from the chat, please.
And thank you for the coffee made of snow. And we'll make sure to get that live chat question in your honor. So, Matthew, what do we got?
So the live chat question is going to go to none other than Old Warrior. He said, can you briefly explain the difference between conscription versus mobilization?
So, conscription is a routine process to where a select number of individuals that have reached a certain age are brought into mandatory military service, usually for a short duration of time. In the modern day, it's usually about a year. And then they're released back into the public, but generally with the military training necessary to be able to rejoin the forces if a larger war breaks out. Mobilization is where the entirety of the country shifts into a wartime setting. So, commercial and civilian industries shift over into wartime production. Conscription is still ongoing, but it's going on at a far larger rate. It's now mandatory and usually for duration, which means until they die or until the war's over. That's usually what duration means. And also, generally, you will see that most civilian creature comforts and luxuries will start to disappear or will be significantly rationed, as most of the nation's resources will be diverted towards the war effort instead. So that's generally the difference between a conscription and a mobilization. So I hope that does address that well. And a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a $5 support from Robert Krogan. And thank you very much, Robert, for that 5. He said, good evening, Enforcers and LSA, and a little something for the hard work.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support. And thank you for enjoying our hard work. We try our best, and I got to thank you incredibly for enjoying it, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. We wouldn't be able to keep it running. And we're always incredibly proud to know that folks like you are looking forward to this channel each and every single day. And so with that, a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from Trauma Loop, who said, U.S. Israelis are not on a wartime alert. Our home front command has no special instructions for citizens, and there aren't any news here about high alert.
Well, I mean, we generally had that news today, didn't we, Matthew?
Yes.
I mean, so I don't know what to tell you.
I mean, you gathered it too, didn't you?
I mean, like, I'm just making sure to double check with you. It's just like, well, hell, I had that news. Matthew had it. We were talking about it before the show. So I do thank you for the support, but that's generally what we have, and that's what we're working off of. So if you have something different, I guess the cards just aren't aligning, but that's what we both got today, and that's what we reported on. But a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from Make a Mill, who said, the Storky, the Sailing Museum.
The Stoiky Doiky.
What is that? Is that a real museum?
No, it's that boat that the Russians sent down to Iran. Let's see. Let me pull up that ship again. The Stoiky. Look at that little goofy thing. It's so small. I mean, look at these guys on it. I mean, like, it's like a small yacht, like, that's been turned into a warship. Let me see if I can show this.
That helicopter just takes me out. That little goofy helicopter in the back.
Yeah, the stupid spider copter. Like, look at that ridiculous thing.
Man, that is goofy looking.
And also, look how big the helicopter is, even compared to the Corvette. I mean, this thing is literally like an armored yacht, basically.
Man, honestly, it is. It's tiny, and also the helicopter is goofy.
Let me see here if I can show y'all another picture to get y'all an idea of the scale of this thing. Actually, let me just read y'all off its displacement and stuff. That'd probably be the best way to do this. So its length is 340 feet. It has a displacement of about 1,800 tons. And it also has, let's see here, a beam of 43 feet and a draught of 12 feet. So this thing is tiny. I mean, it's absolutely tiny. A ship with a displacement of 1,800 tons, in World War II terms, that would actually be a small destroyer, which back then the terms were very much different. Nowadays, this is a Corvette, but back in the day, this would have been a tiny little destroyer. Let me show you this. Fletcher-class destroyer. Now, if I'm right, the displacement... Yeah, look at this. So this ship right here has a larger displacement in weight than this thing. This Fletcher-class destroyer from World War II, which the U.S. considered at the time one of our more lightly armed vessels, one of our smaller ones. This was the small fry of the U.S. Navy back in World War II. This thing is even bigger than this in weight. And also probably in dimensions as well. Let me go take a look at that. Let's see, this thing... Yep, it's longer, it's wider, it's probably even faster, I would assume. Let me see here. The speed of this thing, the max speed of the Fletcher was around 36.5 knots. The max speed of the Stoiky is 27 knots. So this thing from World War II could run circles around the Stoichi. That is ridiculous. Like, that is absolutely stupid. What was the point of even building this thing? Like, it has tiny little VLS cell on the front of it. It has a little flat gun, and it carries around the ugliest helicopter known to man. It is smaller than a Fletcher class. It is slower than a Fletcher class. It has less crew complement than a Fletcher class. It probably even, I bet you this thing has an even smaller range than the Fletcher. Let's take a look. Range, 3,800 nautical miles at 14 knots. The range of a Fletcher class is, oh my god, you've got to be kidding me. The Fletcher class could even go farther than this thing by like 1,500 nautical miles. This thing is worse than a World War II destroyer in literally every measurable way except for weaponry.
So Russia definitely sent their worst. That's for damn sure.
Dude, they said they took this shitty thing and kind of tried to dress it up like a modern vessel, and it's worse than a World War II era destroyer in every single way, but the fact that it can use some guided missiles, but it doesn't even have a lot of them.
That is goofy as hell.
That is crazy, man. Like, that is absolute. I cannot. I thank you so much for throwing in that super chat, because if you had never thrown that in, I would actually not have ever thought to re-look at the Stoichi and how bad the stats are on this thing. And also, how many missiles? Let's see. Armament. It has the one 100mm gun, and then has the one Sea Whiz, and then has. Wait a minute. It only has 8 anti-ship missiles? Which? It then has 12? Only 12 VLS missiles? This is ridiculous. This thing is basically unarmed. This is literally a floating armored yacht. Thank you for the support. I'm gonna have to really go and look at this thing and look at the Russian Navy over a lot more, because this thing is worse than a World War II era destroyer in every conceivable way. They could have just built a Fletcher class and they would have been better off than having this thing. But a huge thanks to you for the support and helping the channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to Kyle Padell. Once again, he puts in another 10, and thank you very much, Kyle, for that support. He said, birds on Tuesday.
And it's time to eat the birds on Tuesday. And I gotta thank you incredibly for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a $5 support from Nathan Sibley. And thank you very much, Nathan, as well. He said, I would bet that dinky Russian rowboat is just there to skim signal intelligence when the U.S. flattens Iran's air defenses, the same as Operation Praying Mantis.
You know, I think they're there for the free fireworks show that's about to happen. I'd agree with you. So a big thanks to you for the support. I hope that it's addressed that well, and we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Data Relay. And thank you very much, Data Relay, as well. They said, cigarette and stone.
Cigarette and stone? What type of combo is that? Like, what do we do with the stone?
It was 2 emojis. It was a cigarette emoji and a stone emoji.
Huh. That's interesting there. I don't know what to make of that, but I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from Catherine Hooper. And thank you very much, Catherine, as well. She said, I just want to thank both of you for all you do. And my coworker from Kyiv was so touched when I showed her the channel. And thank you, Catherine, for the kind words, by the way.
And thank you so much for the kind words, Catherine, and the support. And that's really cool to hear that folks from Ukraine are really touched watching the channel, because we love to know that the Ukrainian folks appreciate the channel, and we love to know that we're able to continue to tell the world about what's going on out there in Ukraine and the kind of fight that they're still fighting for their independence and generally to stop the Russian hordes from moving further on west into Europe. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from the Playmaker, who said, do you think the Iranian state will use the U.S. and Israeli strikes as cover for their extrajudicial assassinations of citizens, for example, blaming the airstrikes for it?
They certainly could. I think, though, they won't even really have to do that and blame the airstrikes for the deaths. They'll probably just, you know, in the midst of all the hurry and confusion about that, they'll probably just start going through prisons and wiping people out, because no one's really going to be paying attention to that right at that moment. And so they don't even have to blame it on anything. Everyone's attention will be elsewhere. And so they could certainly go and do something like that. So I hope that does address it the best I can. That's an unfortunate reality of probably what will happen. But I think that only furthers the case for the prosecutions to come for the crimes against humanity that the Iranian government and its officials have been conducting. But a humongous thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a $5 support from Andrew Honeycutt. And thank you very much, Andrew, as well. He said, what happens when a republic built upon the foundation of free speech and individual rights gets subverted? History tells us what happens. And LSA.
Well, interesting enough, this is actually not the first. Well, if you say that this is happening right now, it's actually not the first time that this ever happened, because the second president of the United States, which was John Adams, actually created the Alien and Sedition Act. Had the Alien and Sedition Act passed by the Congress, signed by the president, and then put into law, which was then shot down by the Supreme Court a little bit later. And if you read it, it is absolutely insane. It basically was trying to delete the right of freedom of speech in the country, and it was shot down by the Supreme Court. Like, let me go pull it up, the Alien and Sedition Act, because it is actually crazy when y'all read the specifics of the act. And let me see here. Let me go and get the Alien and Sedition Act right here. Here we are. So, in the act, it specifically states that any criticism of the U.S. government can be met with scrutiny and possibly even criminal prosecution. That was basically the act in itself. And so any criticism of the president, any criticism of the Congress, any criticism of basically anyone in the government could lead you getting into significant trouble. Let me see here. Let's see. Let me see if I can get to the part where the sentence starts, because the sentences back in the day were fairly long. Let's see. And in any case, so let's see, obtain if not provided. Dang, this act is so long, and it's honestly poorly written compared to what we write these days. It's really hard to read through it and get it really quickly, but it basically is, like, to summarize it again, it basically says if you say any criticism at all against the U.S. government, if you're an alien not from the United States, you're going to be deported immediately. And if you are from the United States and you're criticizing the government, then you can get in some significant trouble for criticizing the government. The Supreme Court shot it down and said that it was absolutely unconstitutional and it was violating the First Amendment protected freedoms of speech. And for that reason, the Alien and Sedition Act then was moot, because the Supreme Court had overruled it. So if you say that that's going on today, either the Supreme Court's going to get involved and say that it's unconstitutional, and the Supreme Court really doesn't get to say, actually, suppressing freedom of speech is within the freedom of speech. Like, it doesn't work that way. Prior Supreme Court rulings generally lay out the precedent, and then they'll just follow along with it if it's challenged again and say, based off of this prior ruling, this is still the case. But that's generally how it works. The U.S. government has had times in history, literally right after the founding of our country, like right here, to where freedom of speech was generally challenged by those in authority, and generally it's never really stood up to the test of time all too well. And you also have to remember, folks, that back then when this was actually passed by the Congress and then signed by the president. This wasn't something that was just kind of like pushed by the executive only without the Congress. This actually had the support of two branches behind it, and the Supreme Court shot it down. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And also, someone said, naturalize before you criticize. Well, according to the Supreme Court's ruling against the Alien Sedition Act, you can be a non-citizen in the United States of America and criticize the U.S. government. And the U.S. government has absolutely no recourse to just boot you out because you're criticizing them. Because the freedoms and rights under the Constitution extend to anyone who's within the United States of America. It's not for specific people. It's not for specific citizens and whatnot. That's a huge misnomer in the modern day, that rights only extend to citizens. Rights extend to anyone who's within the geographical parameters of the United States of America or its territories, or any area that's under its control or occupation for the larger part, unless if it's under martial law. And so you can see that a foreign national can come to the United States and be like, man, America sucks. And that's deeply offensive. I would say I take great offense to that myself. But by the letter of the law, that is entirely acceptable as an extension of freedom of speech, and also the fact that foreign aliens who are visiting the United States do have the right to the same sorts of customs and rights that we have as well. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And also, by the way, before someone said, you're clearly this is literally exactly what the law is. Like, if you don't like the law, that's one thing, but I'm telling you what the law is. So if you have a problem with it, don't have a problem with me, have a problem with the law. That's where your issue would lie if you don't like that. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to D. Hupp, who puts in a 5 and said, I'm just curious, why is the Strait the only way to transport oil out of the Middle East? And is there no plan B as far as transportation of the oil?
There really isn't a plan B because there's one large pipeline that travels through Saudi Arabia that carries about 5 million barrels of crude a day. But the problem is that due to sovereignty issues, that's not really a viable option for Kuwait, Iraq, Bahrain, Qatar, or the UAE because they would have to create some sort of a joint coalition between Saudi Arabia and themselves to set up their own pipeline through Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia will most likely try and charge, if I looked into this, this probably was the case, they might try and charge significant excises, fees, and usage rights for these countries to have a pipeline through Saudi Arabia. So for a lot of these countries, they want to forego the exorbitant cost of probably having to pipe it through Saudi Arabia to the Red Sea, and they'd rather just load it up at their own docks where they don't have to pay significant excises, fees, and customs to Saudi Arabia, and then they're able to ship it out through the Persian Gulf. So that's generally why there cannot really be an actual workaround. And also at that point, if these Middle Eastern countries do set up pipelines through Saudi Arabia, and then Saudi Arabia basically has a monopoly on the oil shipments out of the Middle East, then that means that Saudi Arabia could leverage that later to try and force additional fees, excises, and such on these countries that are shipping their oil via pipeline through Saudi Arabia, which then would pose a great deal of issues then, and then they'd have to shift everything back to port facilities, and then those port facilities would be derelict at that point and out of operation, possibly even for years or decades, and then they'd have to spend a whole bunch of money rebuilding all of that from the ground up. So really, in a realistic world, there isn't really a way to get around the fact that the Persian Gulf is a choke point for a whole load of reasons like that, and that's why the Iranians generally have that sort of leverage even now. Believe me, if these Middle Eastern countries could see that the Strait of Hormuz, which is a major Achilles heel, could have been overcome by just building pipelines through Saudi Arabia, and that could have easily been done, they would have done that by now. Because for 50 years now, the Iranians have threatened the Strait of Hormuz with closure, and this has always been an ongoing threat to a large amount of the Gulf states, even Saudi Arabia still. But I hope that has addressed it the best I can, and a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from It's Greasy, who said, I bet that they look up and there will float better than it flies.
Maybe. One can only hope, you know. But many thanks to you for the support and help the channel to keep running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Arya Fazoli, and thank you very much, Arya, for that 5 as well. They said, sorry if I asked it before, but does Congress need to give the green light for a strike on Iran? And can the president go around that? Well, technically, yeah. I mean, with a deployment this large, it's basically a declaration of war without a declaration. But the problem is, though, no president since like 1945 has ever gotten an official declaration of war from Congress. We've been in tons of wars since then, but we've never gotten a declaration. So in reality, the precedent's been set that he doesn't really have to get it, but legally speaking, he really should get it. But Enforcer, what say you?
Technically, it's not illegal, especially if we're speaking in the precedents that have been laid out in the modern day. You can kind of blame our forefathers, at least in prior generations, for this sort of a thing. But really, ever since the Second World War, there's never been an official declaration of war by Congress in Korea, Vietnam, Grenada, Panama, Iraq, both times, Afghanistan, and so on. There's never, in Vietnam as well, can't forget Vietnam, there's never been an official declaration of war. Nowadays, that's really more so of a formality than anything, and it's one that we've never even exercised. Nowadays, we work off of, I believe it's the War Powers Resolution, which is the idea that the president can conduct military actions without an official declaration of war as long as he notifies the Congress within 48 hours of said military action, and he can then conduct any military actions that he sees necessary for 60 days after the beginning of the military operations. And he can also extend it an additional 30 days through formal written admission to Congress that another 30 days would be necessary to conclude proper military operations. Then it's up to the Congress at that point what they want to do. But the reality is that there's a huge loophole here in the fact that if the Congress decides not to support further military operations after these U.S. soldiers pop up in an area, they basically are leaving all of these U.S. soldiers stranded at that point because the funding stops, the support stops. Those soldiers literally come to a standstill in the middle of a war zone for the large part. So basically, nowadays, it's entirely on the executive whether we go to war or not, and it's been like that for about 70 years. So I'd have to say that's not really a good thing. I mean, you know, I would be straight up, for the past 70 years, that's not been a good thing. And I think that precedent definitely needs to be undone and changed. But if we're working off the past 70 years, what's happening right now, and that's basically how it's been going for 70 years, so there's really nothing illegal about it, especially because of the War Powers Resolution Act. But a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a $10 support from Chemo is my name, who puts in a 10. They said, I really appreciate you guys for being live so late, and I work a night shift and like to stay updated, and you two are really good to listen to.
Hey, and thank you so much for enjoying listening to us. We love to know that we're able to keep you company while you're working. We love to be able to tell hardworking folks around the world about what's going on in the globe, even close maybe to your own neighborhood sometimes. And I gotta say, humongous thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Laser, who puts in a 4. And thank you very much, Laser, for that support. They said the Thin Mint Test Fund.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support. And we will try some thin mints someday. And so humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Hugh, who puts in another $2 support. And thank you very much, Hugh, for that too. And we appreciate that very, very much. And we also have another 2 from It's Greasy, who said, Enforcers Canada watches and supports in LSA.
And I thank you so much for the support, and long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. And so a humongous thanks to you once again. And I just saw the Flying Wombat say the War Powers Act is unconstitutional. It's not, at least at the moment. The War Power Resolutions Act, I believe the one that we have right now, has been around since, like, I believe the 60s, if I'm not mistaken. It's been around for a while. And I believe there was one before that as well, right after the Second World War. So it's not unconstitutional because it was a bill that was created within the Congress, ratified by both the House and the Senate, then signed by the President, and then it became law. And so far, we've never seen that any lawsuit, I don't believe any lawsuits even been brought up about the War Powers Resolution Act. There might have been, but apparently every time that it ever made it to a federal court, federal district court, or the Supreme Court, those lawsuits were generally shot down, and the War Powers Resolution Act was deemed to be constitutional. So, it would be a generally untrue statement to say that it's unconstitutional because for now it's a standing law and the Supreme Court has never shot it down as unconstitutional, which would be the true marker of an unconstitutional law. But with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Andrew Honeycutt, who puts in a 5. He said, what happens when an executive official defies laws and attempts to coerce the established law of a constitution that defines a government?
Well, at that point, you probably end up with a constitutional crisis at some point, because in reality, the Congress should challenge that action because it's starting to usurp their power and authority, and then you'll see that those two branches will face each other down, and then the Supreme Court can come in as a third-party intermediary and try and break that up. But the reality is that, unfortunately, the Supreme Court actually has no enforcement power individually. That all enforcement power is generally held within the executive branch, but it derives its enforcement power from the Congress. So basically, a large check and balances was supposed to be designed. So it would generally create a constitutional crisis, but it would be one that would most likely we would see the Congress would prevail on if that happened, because the executive branch isn't as powerful as people imagine it to be, because in the modern day, everyone always imagines that the president's basically the be-all, end-all, and the say-all. But the reality is that by the Constitution, and even by the laws of the present day, the Congress still holds a great deal of authority on what can and cannot be done. It's just that they don't really exercise that a lot, which is what makes the Congress appear to be weak to the public. But with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, and a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 2 from Dan Brooks, who said super chat is $2 a pop.
And I've got to say, big thanks to you for the support. $2 a pop, 2 chairs. But a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from JB Najolki, who put in a 5. He said, I think the F-117 doesn't deserve to be called a fighter, but what does the Marmot think about that?
What does the Marmot think about it? What does the Marmot think about it? Well, I don't know. Let's go see. Oh, hello there. Hey!
Oh, hello there, Governor. What's your Marmot think about a attack fighter, a stealth one? It's coming in a little bit silently, eh? It's coming in a little bit silent, flying through the sky, cutting through the air like a knife, butter. Like, oh yeah, like, Governor.
Aw, man, I don't know what was going on there, but aw, man, I'm sitting here smoking a doobie. But beyond that, it's
Damn.
Al in the Marmot segment. That's real right there. That's real. But I gotta say, a huge thanks to you for the support, helping this channel to keep it running, and that's apparently what the Marmot thinks about that whole deal right there. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed it incredibly well, tremendously well, I'd hope. And with that, it looks like we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 50 Australian from Ross Nib. And thank you very much, Ross, as well, for that 50 Australian all the way from down under. And we do appreciate that generous support very much. And Ross said, lads, it looks like you're going to be busy as batshit for a while to come. Eat well and sleep well on me, LSA.
And long live the Lee Spring Army. And a huge thanks to you for the support, for eating well and sleeping well. We will hopefully eat and sleep well, I'd hope. And busy as batshit. Is batshit particularly busy? I don't think it'd be. but maybe it is. Maybe it gets a job or something. But a humongous thank you for the support, Ross Nib, and helping this channel to keep it running. We always thank you massively for your incredible support and helping this channel to keep it running so that we can focus on doing this as our full-time job and make sure to cover this news every day. So a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Jay Starr, who puts in a 2, who said, are air defenses around Moscow starting to fail?
From what we can tell, they kind of are a little bit, but not entirely, because they still are protecting the perimeter. It's just the drones are making a lot farther in before they're shot down, which is getting really close to failure, but it's not there yet. So I hope that has addressed that well, and a big thanks to you once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we have a 2 from Martian Sound, a £2 donation. And thank you for that support. They said, what do you guys think about that Chagos Islands deal? Honestly, I saw today there was a little bit of drama going on between the U.S. president and the UK prime minister about that. The U.S. had previously said that they were okay with the deal, and now they've backtracked. The president made a post today saying that Britain can't just give that up. That'd be stupid. Which, honestly, I kind of agree with him on that. I think that is kind of stupid to give that up. We ought to just keep it and simply not bother with the lease. Don't give it back to Mauritius, because we kind of need that for strategic reasons. But, Enforcer, what say you?
Now, if I'm not mistaken, Mauritius, where the hell is Mauritius anyways? Oh, it's down here. Why the hell will we give that to Mauritius?
Yeah, I don't even know. That doesn't make any sense.
We like to say sorry to all the natives that lived on the island who don't live there anymore and haven't lived there for like 100 years by giving it back. It's like, well, you say, what the hell do you mean? It's like, you know, it's not even like anyone's alive and living memory anymore that used to live on this island. The whole thing's a military base. I mean, look at it. There's nothing on there except for a giant-ass military base and some supporting facilities. It's like nobody's literally lived here in forever. Everyone who's been here has been here temporarily. They've been here on orders. And it's like, I don't really understand the whole point. I would have to say, while we disagree with a lot on the president's foreign policy, which I'd say is generally not that good in my opinion, this is one thing I actually would generally have to agree with to an extent. It's a 99-year lease, so this wouldn't be handed back over to Mauritius any time in our life. But at the same time, though, it's like, why hand it over at all, even in 99 years? It doesn't really make any particular sense. It's not like there's a whole bunch of natives in Mauritius going, oh, thank heavens, we get to live on the island we never lived on in the first place. And now Mauritius gets an air base and nothing else out of the whole deal. It's like, why are we giving this up? There's literally nothing here, like, except for the air base. I don't even get it. It makes no sense at all. So, I mean, I didn't get behind this one. But at the same time, though, I would have to say, kind of like being a devil's advocate here, it is a 99-year lease. I mean, the president who's bitching about this right now is going to be dead probably in like 11 years at best, you know, in the greatest of health, will be dead before this thing is even handed over to back to Mauritius. So it's like, you know, what will the world look like in 99 years? Who's to say? Because when the British signed the lease for Hong Kong, which was a 99-year lease, in 1898, the British were on top of the world. They were literally the largest and most powerful empire and nation on the globe. In 1997, they were just another nation in the European Union, and they really didn't even hold that many major colonial holdings, and they certainly weren't one of the largest economic powers in the globe, you know, in the top 3 at that point any longer. So, you know, it's like, you know, a lot can change in 100 years, but at the same time, why would we give it up? I don't really get it. But beyond that, I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running, and I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Woodsman, who puts in it too. He said, Malign Lake Jasper National Park, Alberta, Canada.
Where again? Alberta, where?
Malign Lake Jasper National Park.
Lake Jasper, they say. Where's that? Lake Jasper. Sounds like a name that someone would give their child in, the heavens. Trying to think, the 2000s, early 2000s. Oh, heavens, look at this.
Man, that is nice.
Look at
Nice
that
mountains.
water.
Look at that water. It's nice and blue.
Ooh, wee. That's really nice looking, actually. Oh, look at that. Elk creature.
Elk.
Heavens, elk creature, really something. The water doesn't look that. Oh, that's actually dirt. I was going to say the water doesn't look that good there. That's just dirt. But it looks really nice up there. Thank you so much for the support and sharing that with us. And I gotta say, a really beautiful part of Canada right there. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and with that, folks, that is actually our last super chat right there. So a huge shout out to everybody once again for supporting the channel tonight and helping us to keep the channel running. We do appreciate the support very, very much. It's now time to jump into our Morse code decoders and some live chat questions. And tonight, we had the whole roster as usual. We had Paul, Kevin, Mason, Joni, Norm, Arabelle, Her Royal Fluffness, Kush, Cooper, Sire, and Brian. They said the Morse says from the LSA Signal Corps, Iran is seeing what is only the inevitable, the fall of the regime. LLT LSA, and great job, guys.
And that's the sound of money. Y'all got that down on the nail? That was the Morse code mention of the night. I gotta congratulate y'all greatly in the least Premier Cinema Corps. Y'all are always getting that correct time and time again, and it's truly a profound and amazing thing to know that y'all are always getting that correct, and we're very proud of you all. And with that in mind, folks, would y'all believe it? We have 4 minutes to get live chat questions before we have to round this thing out. It's a union requirement that we round this thing out in 3.5 hours. Otherwise, the workers get angry. And that's me, because we get no sleep if we go overtime. So with that, we are going to be getting as many live chats as we can before we round this thing out. So Matthew, what do we got?
And our first live chat question is going to go to none other than Tom Exman, who said, how are Russians joining with Iran's navy? And are they in Iran on their ships, or are they going to be joining the Iranian ships?
So the Russians are actually there on their singular corvette that they sent called the Stoiky, which will apparently be joining in as a individual vessel in the or more so the venture control the strait that the Iranians are in right now. So that appears to be how the Russians are going to be involved with the Iranians here soon. It's going to be on their own ship with their own crew, but involved in an Iranian military exercise. So I hope that answers that well, and we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Cedric, who said, do you believe the U.S. has enough resources in the theater in the Middle East to get the job done effectively?
Oh, absolutely. We have more than enough naval assets and air assets in the area right now to really be able to obliterate the Iranians in an offensive and also defend ourselves well in the defensive. So I would have to say we most certainly have the measures and capabilities to be able to, 1, conduct an attack, and 2, defend ourselves in the region. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one is going to go to Nick, who said, what is the range of Iran's longest range rockets or missiles?
The Karam Shahar and the Emir, I believe it's called, are the longest range missiles, and they have a range of about 2,000 kilometers, meaning that at their farthest, they can reach into the very southeastern tips of Germany for the most part. Any farther than that, they're not capable of right now, but they are working on an ICBM that would be capable of reaching the U.S. eastern seaboard. So with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, and with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one is going to go to Lithium, who said, will we see the first widespread usage of the JASSM during this operation on Iran?
It definitely is possible. The JASSM can largely be equipped on most every aircraft that will be in theater, including the F-15Es. So we may definitely see, well, actually, I believe it's the F-15EX Strike Eagle that has to carry the JASSM, but we definitely could be seeing them used this time around, and that would be quite interesting. But I hope that does address it the best I can, and with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one's going to go to One Visual, who said, what do you think will be the final economical straw to bring Russia to its knees?
I think the collapse of a major oil magnate like Lukoil, Rosneft, or Gazprom, or any other major Russian oil or gas company will probably be the Achilles, well, more so the absolute failing of the Russian economy. That'll be its tipping point. Because right now it's doing pretty bad, but if a monolithic economic system like that, or an institution collapses like that, it's going to have resounding effects throughout the whole country almost instantaneously. So I hope that does address that well, and we're on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one is going to go to Maurice, who said, do you think that they will hold off the attacks on Iran until after the Olympics? And I feel like it's coming about Friday or Saturday night, desert time.
I'm doubting that they'll hold off until after the Olympics. The Olympics just aren't as pressing and important as they used to be, either by viewership ratings or international prestige, from what we can tell these days. So they probably wouldn't wait because it's not that big of a thing, the Olympics, really. So I think they would probably just attack whenever the timetable is ready and whenever the order is given, regardless of the Olympics. So I hope that does address that well. And with that, also, a humongous thanks for the support, Andrew Honeycat 7427, who threw in a 5 and said, "What happens when a leader of a country has unparalleled authority suppressing and dissenting opinions by means of controlling the narrative?" Oh, that's an interesting question, and I believe that would be a little bit beyond our answer at the moment. I don't believe we've ever really seen that in democratic society like this, so we'll have to see. But I always have a feeling that democracy manifest will always prevail. And so big thanks to you for the support. I love this channel to keep on running, Andrew Honeycutt. And with that, it's time for us to move on into the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And this one goes to Alexander, who said, do you believe there will also be massive ground troop attacks or an invasion after the bombings to stabilize the state and oppose the mullahs? And I don't think any soldier would be.
I'm doubting it. I think it's mostly going to be an air operation, and I think that we're probably going to try and conduct a satellite restructuring like we're doing in Venezuela right now, which I'm heavily against. I think that's a bad idea and a bad plan, but that's probably what they're going to try and do, to where they wipe out top Iranian leaders, and then they take the junior leaders and go, okay, we're rebuilding the government our way, and you're either with it or you're against it, and if you're against it, you're probably going to end up dead. And that's probably what the U.S. government will tell them, and that's probably how they'll try and work it, so that way no one has to go in on the ground in Iran. But I also think that that's an absolutely ridiculous way to do it, and there's a lot of reasons for that, but I think all of y'all can generally see them. It's about plain as day. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And we have one last super chat before we round this thing out. Ryan H. on Wheels threw in a 5 and said, could the SOTU, I believe that's supposed to be the Supreme Court of the United States, address effect when the president chooses to order a military strike on Iran? And no, that would actually be an issue primarily between the Congress and the president. And then that could, the Congress or some other form of a government body could sue the president, and then that lawsuit could be brought up to the Supreme Court. But the Supreme Court is an appeals court, so they actually can't actively go out of their way to go do something. That court doesn't have active powers, it's more so passive powers. So it has to be brought up to the Supreme Court by someone else for them to be able to address it and speak on it. So I hope that does address it the best I can, Ryan H. on Wheels, and a big thanks to you for the support and help with this channel to keep on running. Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry. That's State of the Union. I'm so sorry. Thank you, Diane Marion, for correcting that. Could the State of the Union address effect when Post chooses an order to order a military strike on Iran? I'm not entirely sure. I don't know if they consider that to be an important optic or not, to be able to say that they're the president of peace and then bomb Iran after that, or say that they're president of peace and bomb Iran before that. I'm not really sure if that matters to them a whole lot. So sadly, I wouldn't be able to tell you for certain there. And I'm so sorry about misunderstanding that, Ryan H. on Wheels. That's on my end. Very, very big apologies for that. But humongous thanks to you all so much once again for watching. And we are absolutely honored to be able to know that we made it through another 3.5 hours of news and questions with all of y'all. All 9,000 people who are still here. That is a lot of people to be here 3.5 hours later. I got to say that we're entirely honored and greatly appreciative to know that 19.5 thousand of y'all were here at the peak, and 161,000 of y'all have watched the stream before it ended. Of course, we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news from around the world, and if there is a short war video to be made, Enforcer Matt will be the one making that short war video. Hey, let's get it, baby! And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukrainian, I'm Slava. Long live the Lee Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, we will see you all tomorrow on that short war video midday if there is enough news to cover, and also definitely on the nightly war news stream at 10 p.m. Eastern tomorrow to cover the rest of the news throughout the day. And of course, a huge shout out to the 161,000 plus people that joined us by the end of the stream, and we will see you all tomorrow. And with that, Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava, get some rest, and good night.